Hello and welcome to WGTC Radio, the official podcast of entertainment website We Got This Covered. I'm Jonathan Lack.
And I'm Sean Chapman.
And we're here to talk about Lord of the Rings.
Yes, you may expect after hearing the last podcast.
Yes, last week we talked about the world of J.R.R. Tolkien in literature form. We talked about the Hobbit the book, the Lord of the Rings the book, and some of the supplemental material. This week we are talking about the Lord of the Rings film trilogy. Came out from 2001 to 2003, directed by Peter Jackson, will be followed up soon by The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey, and its sequels.
Yes.
Which we are very excited for.
Very, very much so.
Yes. And to remind you, this is the second part of our sort of three-part retrospective of Tolkien-related stuff. So, again, we'll be talking about Lord of the Rings on film this week, but next week we will be offering an audio commentary, which you can sync up with the film, on The Hobbit. Not the live-action new Hobbit, that's like 3 hours long. The 80-minute animated Hobbit by Rankin Bass from 1977.
Yes.
If you have not seen it, see it. It's great.
It's awesome.
Awesome.
Especially if you have kids, or you like babysitting or something. It's a great kids film.
Yes. Great kids film. We love it. We're going to be talking about it, do a little commentary. You can sync it up, so get a copy of it ready. It's out of print on DVD. You can buy it on iTunes. I believe you can buy it on Zune. You probably find it in other places, too. Find an old VHS somewhere.
Yeah.
So there are plenty of those lying around.
Yeah.
And just sync it up, and we'll have that'll be the main part of the podcast next week, but if you don't really want to do the commentary thing, we'll probably tack something on to the end of that with other discussions.
Yeah.
But that'll be sort of the primary thrust of the podcast next week. And of course, the week after that, The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey will have been out for 2 or 3 days, and we will be discussing that movie in full detail. So, have seen that in 2 weeks.
Yep.
So, in any case, before we get started, I should probably note, I have a cold this week. My voice is probably sort of crackly and deeper than usual, and I, may choke to death somewhere in the middle of the podcast.
So if you do, I'll just keep it going.
That's good. That's why we have 2 people. It's the buddy.
Yeah,
it's perfect.
We got redundancies. It's just like one of us drops, we just keep on going.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So, Sean, you want to get us started here? Tell us about the Lord of the Rings film trilogy.
Okay, so yes, the Lord of the Rings film trilogy, as you said, came out from 2001 to 2003, and we were talking about this before the podcast started, but we were actually pretty young when they came out, but it doesn't feel like we were.
No.
To me, it feels like the Lord of the Rings films came out like a couple of years ago. Like, I always feel like they came out a couple of years ago, and I have no idea why.
It's a weird thing because they've sort of been so omnipresent in sort of our movie-going lives since they first came out. But they never feel any less fresh, I feel, to a certain degree.
Yeah, they always feel new to me.
Because they're so big and there's so much to sort of explore within the movies. And if you're going to watch them, you do have to kind of commit to 11, 12 hours of viewing.
Yeah, if you have the extended editions, which are the versions you should have.
And I think that's another point to make is that, even though the last extended cut came out in 2004, so it's not like that was much later, but they always felt like there was new Lord of the Rings stuff kind of coming out.
Yeah.
So 2001, you had Fellowship, but then before Two Towers came out, you had that extended cut. So that was sort of being revised. And then Two Towers did the same thing, Return of the King did the same thing.
Yeah.
And even once they slowed down, there have been theatrical re-releases at times and new versions, and it's
like Blu-ray versions and
In
everything.
fact, they're doing for The Hobbit on Saturday, December 8th, theaters across the nation are doing a marathon of all 3 extended cuts in theaters, and I'm going to that. It sounds fun.
It sounds kind of brutal, but fun at the same time.
Yeah, I've never sat down and watched all 3 movies back to back, so.
I haven't either. It's like, they're movies that, I wouldn't even want to. Like, I'd rather have a little bit of break in between them.
Right.
I always watch them in quick succession when I watch them on DVD. Like, I don't just I'm just going to watch The Fellowship of the Ring. I'll be like, I'm going to spend this week and watch a movie like every other night. Basically, is how I watch those movies.
Right, and I think it's sort of interesting. You do sort of have to have a break between them when you usually watch them. And part of that is that's how they were designed to be seen. There was a year between them.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that when we get into the individual movies, but that's one of the brilliant things Jackson did, was structure them in such a way that they work as standalone films. Not in such a way that you're just going to pick Two Towers off the shelf and have that as a full experience, but you can watch the Two Towers and it's satisfying.
Yeah.
Before you move on to part 3. Mm-hmm. In any case, so yes, these came out between 2001 to 2003, and this is the other thing people kind of forget about them, is that they were completely 100% innovative when they came out. No one had ever tried anything like this. In fact, no one has tried anything like this except Peter Jackson a second time with the Hobbit trilogy.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's almost hard to imagine what opportunity would arise for something like this to happen again. Because, the Lord of the Rings franchise and the name is so strong that it sort of is a lot, like, those movies can sort of thrive off of that, and you get a lot of really good buzz because everyone's heard of the Lord of the Rings. I don't think like an original IP is like we're going to make this new trilogy and like create this whole new world and do like this whole thing and like make these ridiculous 3-hour-long movies and stuff out of like just an original idea in film. I don't think that would happen.
No, but I mean they did shoot them all back to back. Not even back to back. They just shot them concurrently as one movie. I think the production schedule was all the Hobbit stuff was at the start, sort of all that like book one of Fellowship. But other than that, it was all concurrent. And this is the other thing we should talk about is I highly recommend on the extended cuts sitting down sometime and just watching all the appendices material on the bonus discs because that's almost as good as the movies themselves because the story of the making of these films is incredible.
Yeah, no, that's definitely the best bonus material stuff I've ever seen on DVDs.
It was an adventure unto itself.
It's because it was such a massive undertaking. I mean,
15 months of principal photography, and that doesn't even count all the pickup shots they did for each movie the summer before they came out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But the best part of those is just all the stories about how people got just like hurt and maimed on the set of The Lord of the Rings.
It's unbelievable. The best one, I think, Peter Jackson and Sean Astin described this in the Fellowship features, is the scene at the end of Fellowship, Sam is running out to meet Frodo's boat because Frodo's trying to leave alone and Sam won't let him, and he runs off the shore into the water. Turns out there was a big shard of glass in that water, and it impaled Sean Astin's foot. Mm-hmm. Piece of glass impaled his foot, and there's footage of him ripping it out. I don't know how they got clearance to put that on the DVD.
Yeah.
It's really bloody. Kudos to Sean Astin, because he handles it pretty well. I mean, he's just sort of... And Elijah Wood is a dick to him, just running around making jokes. Like, they have all this, candid footage of this, and it's funny just how, funny Elijah Wood finds this.
Yeah, all the Hobbits I always thought were, all of them, the actual actors were really fucking funny.
They are, yeah.
They made a really good team offset, too, based on all the stuff in the bonus features.
Yeah. So totally, and then the other best injury is when Viggo Mortensen, Aragorn, they've just found the bodies of all the Uruk-hai
that have taken Merry and Pippin.
Right, the Rohirrim have just come in and killed them all, and the Rohirrim think they killed Merry and Pippin too because they weren't really. It was night; they weren't discerning.
And Aragorn finds one of their brooches or whatever in the pile.
Right, so he's mad. He kicks one of the Uruk-hai's head and goes, "Ah!"
Yeah, he gives out this really loud shout.
And why did he give out that shout, Sean?
Because he broke his fucking toe when he kicked the helmet, and they kept that take. They did that 5 different takes or something like that, and on the last one, Viggo Mortensen broke his toe and he kicked the helmet, and so when he was crying out in pain, he was fucking crying out in pain. Peter Jackson's like, yeah, leave it in. I mean,
that's in the movie.
Yeah, it's a great fucking shout, but it does kind of make it hard to... every time I watch that scene now, that occurs to me where it's like, oh, Jesus.
Poor Viggo Mortensen.
Just not knowing that he broke his toe makes that scene kind of hard to watch. It's like, oh, God. Yeah, that looks like it really fucking hurt.
Totally. So, yeah, lots of good injury stories. But anyway, again, 15 months of principal photography, this massive cast, of a lot of them kind of unknowns or sort of up-and-coming actors, which is amazing in and of itself. That would not happen today. Mm-hmm. And just, again, and this is an interesting point, too. These movies, the final budget for the entire trilogy combined was $280 million. That is nothing today. Yeah. There are individual movies made for more than that. And this was 3 films, and because of the budget, it is still the most profitable film venture of all time, I believe. Avatar may have surpassed it, but then again,
Avatar cost a shit ton of money.
Yeah. And... we'll see. I mean, these movies obviously had individual marketing budgets, but again, they made up the cost of production on Fellowship alone, and then Two Towers and Return of the King were pure profit. It was an amazing business model, and that's probably what prompted people later on in the decade to start doing, 2-part adaptations and whatnot. Mm-hmm. But with Lord of the Rings, this was the only way you could do it.
Yeah, no, Lord of the Rings that was one of the things when they were making the movies, is that Lord of the Rings is really considered for the longest time unfilmable. Kind of like Watchmen, where it's there's so much to the Lord of the Rings and especially the Lord of the Rings really takes advantage of it being a book. It's very much a book. Yeah. It's not I don't know, that it's Harry Potter or something like that, where it's you can kind of picture it. You have to cut a lot of stuff out, but you can kind of see the movie. It's with Lord of the Rings, I'm reading those books. I still can't imagine, how the hell would you make this into a movie, because there's so much there.
And I think the key to that, and we'll talk about all the adaptation, I think that has to be a key part of our discussion here, is how they adapted it, because it was brilliant.
Yeah.
But the key thing here is that Peter Jackson, Philippa Boyens, and Fran Walsh, who wrote the scripts, they were huge fans of the books, and they understood Tolkien as intimately as anyone does, but they were also willing to make changes, and they had their own vision for the series, and that's key.
Yeah.
Because a lot of adaptations of books, of TV shows, of musicals, whatever, film is a medium unto itself, just as a book is a medium unto itself. They are unique mediums, and especially with a work like Lord of the Rings that is a book. And if you want to make it cinematic, you've got to kind of have some balls and cut some stuff and be willing to piss people off.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Watchmen comparison is actually kind of apt, where when the Watchmen film came out, which is, again, where the graphic novel of Watchmen is sort of like the ultimate graphic novel. It so perfectly takes advantage of its form and like the
to the point
static
where
images.
To the point where the illustrator of Watchmen is doing
Dave
things...
Gibbons.
I think it's the middle chapter of the book. He's doing the thing where you have...
Fearful Symmetry. Where the entire thing is symmetrical. They so perfectly took advantage of what a graphic novel can do that when Zack Snyder made the film adaptation, he didn't... Other than the ending, he made almost no changes. He cut some stuff out, obviously, but it's still a really, really long film. But I like Watchmen as a movie, but... It feels like if they had been a lot more bold with the adaptation, it would have made a much better film. Where they were they were trying to be so respectful to the source material that they did not take advantage of what they could do in adapting it, and so it makes it kind of at parts a kind of dull movie because you're just taking everything like straight out of the graphic novel. That doesn't work when you're making a movie. The pacing is completely different.
Right. I mean, it's an interesting thing where Watchmen feels like you could cut that 3-hour movie into like a 6-episode miniseries, and it would work much better.
Yeah, no,
because
it definitely would work better.
Their version of Chapter 2 is really good in a vacuum, where you're going through all the different flashbacks. Completely kills the momentum of the movie.
Yeah, exactly. They really do, because they just take like chapter by chapter the graphic novel and just like, okay, this section of the movie is just this chapter from the graphic novel, but those sections are meant to be read apart from each other. They're not necessarily meant to be read all in an order, and they're also meant to be read. The pacing when you're reading is so different from when you're watching a movie, where you need the pacing to keep going. You need this momentum to keep watching it.
But Lord of the Rings, I think it's safe to say, as a film, is 100% cinematic. I think you could argue it's the pinnacle of sort of cinema as spectacle in terms of how it does combat and how it does sweeping epic storytelling and all these things. I mean,
they're definitely really, really gorgeous films. Particularly, I think the most remarkable thing that I feel about the films is just like sort of the production of it, just where you really feel like it's Middle Earth. They so perfectly create that world that you think it's like taking place in our actual reality.
Yeah, here's a great tidbit from the bonus features. Is I guess Peter Jackson, when the Weta Workshop was going to do all the effects for the movies and all the production design, and he told them, like on the day they started the project, he gave this big speech and he said, the goal of these movies from a production design standpoint is that he wanted them to pretend that they had the chance to actually shoot in Middle Earth. We were going to shoot in Middle Earth modern times, but these would be the locations that thousands of years ago this happened. And so we have to fill these locations with accurate period detail and accurate sets and all these things, and we're doing history. We're not doing a movie. We're doing a historical, drama. And so they would even build sets like Hobbiton months before shooting to let them weather over time.
Yeah,
and it works because it feels lived in. This is Middle Earth. It's not a movie. It's like a window to Middle Earth.
Yeah, no, I had this one book. I think it's called like Lord of the Rings. Like I forget what it was actually called, but it was about sort of the production of the movies, but it was sort of fictionally consistent. It wasn't like from like the perspective of someone writing about the films. It was like someone writing about the history of Middle Earth, but using like all the details in the film, and it would have like the weapons, the armor, and that kind of stuff, and like the buildings and the architecture, and it would just sort of have descriptions of it and have like really close up pictures and say it's like, okay, this is Fullard because this sword would be used by the Gondorian swordsmen and they're on foot and they use a big shield, so they need a lighter weight sword and stuff like that. And it sort of really let me see all the thought that went into the production design, because all that stuff they had to think about. They had to make, this is what a Rohirrim armor would look like, and this is why it would look like that. And it takes some elements from real world, like Roman armor and stuff like that, but they thought about all of it, and they created all the motifs, all of the artistic design on the armor, and that's just incredible to me. There's so much detail into every little thing in those films.
And to me, why that makes this such a perfect adaptation of Tolkien, even if it's not a 100% accurate adaptation, is that Tolkien was all about the detail. The films have that same level of detail, it's just done in a cinematic way instead of a literary way. Mm-hmm. And that's the key to adaptation.
Yeah,
right
no,
there.
I completely agree. It to me, I know it. Sometimes the Lord of the Rings movies can be kind of controversial among Tolkien fans because they do change a lot. But I think a lot of fans are really unforgiving about that kind of stuff and don't recognize the realities of trying to make something into a movie, and that what they picture a Lord of the Rings movie as being would suck so hard.
Yeah.
Because they just want a straight adaptation, like they want Tom Bombadil and they want like 5 hours of just watching the hobbits walk around. It's like, that can't be a movie. You can't make that into a movie. That's why everyone thought it was unfilmable, was because nobody was thinking outside of the box and thinking about how would you seriously try to adapt this, would you seriously try to make a film out of this and make it a good film instead of trying to make it a good representation of the book word by word.
Yeah. I think the other thing to say when talking about the production design in sort of a general standpoint is that these movies were made at a time where computers had not really taken over completely, and Jackson and Weta Workshop were smart enough to use computers for things when they absolutely needed them. Like, you can't do Gollum any other way. He has to be CGI. But other than that, other than stuff that has to be CGI, like big armies and things like that, it's all physical. It's either models or they actually built the goddamn thing. Like Hobbiton's real. You can go visit Hobbiton. It's in Matamata, New Zealand. They built the damn thing, and all of these things. They built the Golden Hall in Rohan. All of these things. Minas Tirith they obviously did not build, but there's a model of that they shot.
Yeah,
and
they use a lot of scale models. That are really cool to look at.
So there's no effect in Lord of the Rings that pulls you out of the movie, which all of its contemporaries, which were overusing CGI at the time, you cannot go watch a movie from 2001 to 2003 and not wince once or twice at bad CGI.
I mean, you can't watch a movie today without wincing once or twice at bad CGI.
I mean, even all the orcs, the temptation must have been there to be like, okay, that's a lot of makeup, we can't do that, let's just CGI them.
We can't do that for like the 50 dudes who are in this scene. It's like, fuck it, we're going to do it. Yeah.
And as I understand it, The Hobbit is going to be using substantially more CGI. The goblins will be real people, but they will have CGI elements grafted onto them. And I think we're at a place in effects where that's probably acceptable at this point. Yeah. And I also don't expect... Peter Jackson has never over-relied on CGI to us, the degree that some filmmakers do.
Yeah.
So it'll be fine. But it's just like... They're very special films to me because while they were made in sort of our modern era, they were made in such a way that they look timeless.
Yeah, and they took a lot of values from older ways of making films. And I think that really helps you get absorbed into it because it has such this physical reality to it because they use so much practical effects.
Yep. Works very, very well. So, that's sort of a general sense, but let's sort of go back. Memories of these films came out December 2001.
Yeah.
I would have been in third grade, you would have been in third grade. We didn't know each other back then.
Yeah, no.
But what are your memories of seeing Fellowship for the first time?
I just remember it being really, really awesome.
Yeah.
I remember that's just basically my memories of all the films, is that they were some of the first films I watched in a theater that were like, this is really, really goddamn cool. This is one of the most spectacular things I've ever seen watching those movies. And I know, I really like The Lord of the Rings too because it's sort of one of the things that my brother and I share in common a lot is that we both really, really love both like the universe because we listen to the audiobooks together on the trips, but then we also love the film so much. And it's one of the things that my brother is actually really nerdy about is The Lord of the Rings, so that's kind of fun. We got the theatrical editions of all the movies when they came out on DVD, even knowing that the extended edition cuts were going to come out.
Of course, everyone did that.
Too.
Yeah.
So it's just like, well, if we have to watch it now, we can't wait the extra 6 months until they come out with the extended cuts because we have to watch it again.
Right.
It's coming out on DVD. So
it's even more pathetic than that, though, because the theatrical cuts came out on DVD in August, and then the extended would come out in November. It was only a 2-month wait. And I remember it was the same with my family, where theatrical cuts came out, and initially my dad and I, we thought, all right, we don't need this, we're going to wait for the extended. And I think we made it 2 weeks past the time the DVD came out, and then we went down to Blockbuster and bought it. Yeah. And it was just like, we have to have it. And we watched it several times probably before the extended came out, and then we got that, and we're like, oh, this is so much better.
Yeah, it's like throw the theatrical cut away because we've got the extended editions now, and those are amazing.
But thank you, theatrical DVD, for tiding us over.
Yeah.
So, but no, my memory of seeing it for the first time, there was so much hype around it. And not with people I knew, because other kids my age weren't really interested in it. I don't recall, at least in my elementary school in third grade, people did after Fellowship came out, but sort of beforehand, no one of that age range was reading Lord of the Rings, so they didn't know it. I'd read it, and it was really just my dad and I, because my little brother was way too young to get into it at that point. And I think the first one he saw theatrically was probably Two Towers. But in any case, so we went and saw Fellowship opening night. We were really excited. My dad and I always had a joke, like recurring through time, of like weird things they do on movie tickets, like where they have to abbreviate the title, is that it just said on the movie ticket for Fellowship of the Ring, Fellowship of Ring. We always like that. So.
Like, why don't you just do the LOTR, FOTR? Like, why don't you just use the...
They do that now, but it was funny.
Loader, foder.
Yeah, Fellowship of Ring. And, I just will never forget that night of seeing Lord of the Rings for the first time. I can picture where we were sitting, how I viewed the screen, what the movie looked like. It was because that moment, I've always said, was my cinematic awakening. There are a lot of movies that contributed to my love of movies. That was the movie that made me fall in love with movies. That was the point of no return. I saw Fellowship of the Ring, and that was it. That was what I was going to do the rest of my life, was watch movies. Because that was another level. Like, I'd never seen anything that did that much with the power of film, that took you on that kind of journey, and had that kind of emotional and visual impact. And, of course, I've seen many movies now, but in many ways I don't feel any different. I still feel like nothing has quite taken me on a journey just using cinema like Lord of the Rings did.
Well, you, my friend, have never watched The Seventh Voyage of Sinbad. So
right.
There's still that.
I know. But anyway, Fellowship of the Ring is also unique as the movie I can pinpoint as being the film I've watched most of my life, because I can pinpoint exactly at least like 12 different times I've seen it, and then there's got to be countless other times. Yeah. So I've seen that movie a fuck ton. I think I saw it like 4 times in theaters, and again. It was you watched it a lot. Even though it's 3 hours, none of them feel their length.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And even if they start to in good ways.
Yeah, no, like they do feel like long movies, but because they take place over a long period of time, so you sort of, as the viewer, experience that as well.
Yeah.
I think it's a good way to experience time. It's not like, oh, this is taking forever. It's like, this is taking forever. Like, this is an experience.
Cool. Right.
Yeah. This is a journey.
Yeah, it's like Frodo's going through some shit.
Yeah,
That's too bad. Then I remember seeing, obviously, Two Towers. It was sort of a similar experience, but Two Towers was an interesting one because that was the first major movie to play at a theater that's near us called the Colorado Mills. It was a new United Artists Theater. It's at our sort of big mall, and it's sort of the main theater in the Golden Lakewood area.
Yeah.
Along with Denver West, which is right across the way from it. And Fellowship had played at Denver West, and Colorado Mills had literally just opened for Two Towers, and so I remember we went to see Two Towers opening night, and there was hardly anyone in the theater because no one knew that theater was there. And it was really weird, because then we saw Return of the King there the next year, and it was completely packed.
Yeah.
I mean, this is something that's changed, and I don't know if it's because audiences are just smaller for movies now, or that there are so many more theaters that it's more diffuse. Movies used to sell out.
Yeah.
At Lord of the Rings, you had to get your ticket early. This was a thing. You had to get your ticket early, get there a couple hours, even if you weren't doing midnight. I mean, midnight was not even a big thing yet.
Yeah.
But you went to see it, and...
Trying to think I think Revenge of the Sith was the last movie I ever had to stand in the line for.
Right.
I mean, I tend not to try to go to movies when they come out anymore anyways, because...
And I
a sucker's game. But honestly, I think it wouldn't be a problem now. Like, that's one of the reasons why I don't try to anymore, is because I went to Revenge of the Sith when it came out, and was like, well... It's like, I don't like standing in lines for movies. It's like, I could just wait tomorrow and I'd be totally fine.
Right. And, I mean, I guess I have sort of a biased view because I haven't seen a movie on its opening day in a long time. I just go to the press screenings, but I go to midnight screenings every once in a while, and those are sort of similar to that. But back in the day, the 7 p.m. screening, that was what midnight is like now. Mm-hmm. And it's very different now. I feel like you could, when The Hobbit comes out on December 14th, you could probably go to any theater in your town at like 6:30, buy a ticket, and maybe you won't get the best seat in the house, but you'll probably sit near where you want to sit.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a weird thing, but it's just like things have changed.
Yeah.
And The Hobbit's still going to make a, shit ton of money.
Yeah.
So, in any case, any other sort of memories of seeing these films initially?
Again, I just remember them being awesome. I mean, I remember that period of my life just sort of being consumed by Lord of the Rings. I mean, my life is still kind of consumed by Lord of the Rings. But,
yeah.
I mean, there's also because there's all like the video games that came out.
I was going to ask you about that. Which video games did you play? Because I played a
lot of them.
Oh yeah,
I played maybe most of them. I played some that are based just on the books. There's the Fellowship of the Ring PC game that's based on the books. It's terrible that I played. There's the Game Boy game that's based on the book. That's also terrible that I played.
The Game Boy Advance Fellowship by Black Games.
Yeah, it's like a sort of a turn-based RPG type thing.
Can I
fucking terrible.
It's terrible. Can I confess something?
Sure.
I gave it away a couple of years ago, and I just bought it again on eBay.
Why the fuck did you buy that goddamn game?
It was 99 cents.
God, that game fucked me so many times.
I know, and I started playing it again, and I remembered why I got rid of it. It is maybe the worst. One of the worst games I've ever played.
It's been so long since I played it, but I remember that was one of the times, that was like I had an experience with that game that sort of made me like wary of how I save. Like, I'm so obsessive about archiving saves nowadays because of that game fucked me over. Where there's one point, I don't even remember how it happened, but there was just one point where basically I remember it was before you go to Weathertop, but it's like you've been playing with the Hobbits for almost the entire time because again it's based on the game or on the books, so it goes through like all the shit that happens in the books. So it's just one of those really frustrating experiences where you're like, man, I just want to get fucking Strider. Can I just get I am so sick. I have a party of 4 people, and they're all hobbits, and they all fucking suck. They get killed. It's like the game is balanced for you to have Strider and Gandalf and Legolas and Gimli, but you don't have any of those guys, so you only have the hobbits. So it's like, I'm getting killed by everything. I finally get Strider, and I think I got in a fight with a troll, and there's like a save point right before you get in a fight with a troll, and I think my characters got poisoned or something like that. But basically, my save was such that I only had this one save, and I would die. I would just die immediately after the save. So it was like, I can't play this game anymore. Like, I went through, like, the bulk of the game getting to fucking... I got fucking Strider. Finally, I got Strider. And he only has a broken sword. This is, like... That also made me realize how fucking dumb it is that Strider walks around with the shards of Narsil. It's like, you've got half a sword, dude. You can't... You're not gonna kill anybody with that. Get a real fucking two-handed sword. But yeah, after that, and then... Yeah. You know, then years later, Assassin's Creed Revelations is just the same goddamn thing. Saves keep on fucking me. Developers need to...
I'm sorry, Sean.
Developers need to get behind that at some point and, like, archive saves in games automatically. That they don't keep on... Like, have, like, 3 to 5 saves archived. You don't need to overwrite every goddamn autosave every single time. It's not fucking 2001 anymore. We can handle the save thing now.
But thank God the Lord of the Rings game license transferred to EA from whoever the hell had it before, because The Two Towers was sort of the first big Lord of the Rings game.
I think it was awesome.
It's good. I believe I played the PS2 version once.
I had the Game Boy version.
And I had the Game Boy Advance version also.
I didn't play the handheld versions past that. I only got the console games.
All right. Well, I actually
so hard about that Fellowship of the Ring game. I'd never touched another handheld Lord of the Rings game.
I know the handheld one. I was playing mostly handhelds at this time in my life, so I actually knew the GBA versions better. And from my standpoint, at least, those were really fun. And they were not turn-based. It was just you had your character, and like I think you had a party, but you could kind of cycle through which one you would be playing at the moment. Mm-hmm. And they had certain weapons, and you would just go through areas, and there were orcs and things to clear out. And it was good graphics for the GBA. They were fun.
Yeah, no, I played because EA released console versions for Two Towers and Return of the King. Got GameCube Two Towers, which that's a really fun game, where you basically play as Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli. It's just sort of like a standard hack and slash, but it's one of the few... It's not like it's a great game, but it really takes advantage of the license, and it just, like, you know, it's a good quality hack and slash type game. And then the Return of the King version came out, and that's a really fun game. That's especially on co-op.
I see you have it for Xbox.
I've got it over there on our game shelf. I'll still pull that out every now and then and play it, because you get to play as Gandalf. Then there's also a section where you play as Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli. And then there's also a section where you play as Frodo and Sam. It sort of like branches off into those few stories. But the best part, I love this game because how you play the game is basically, you know, you've got like light attack, strong attack, just sort of basic combos. But you level up your characters by getting experience, and like the more combos you get this sort of like combo meter that'll rise. So if you do a lot of combos on enemies in quick succession, you'll go into this thing called perfect mode, where your damage is like doubled, and you will get like maybe like 3 times experience for every kill. So you really want to get into perfect mode so that you can level up your characters faster. And they have this one move that you can unlock called Orc Bane, and there's like a different version of that for all the different types of enemies. And it's basically you block an attack from an orc and then press the right trigger, and it kills them, and you instantly go into perfect mode. So there's this one level of the game where you're going to Minas Tirith. It's like right before you go to Pelinor's Field, and you have to go past this gate. And there's this area right in front of the gate where like hundreds of enemies spawn in. Not all at the same time, but they'll like keep on coming in waves. And every time, I think the mission is called Southern Gate. And every time I get to that mission, I'm like, I'm going to be playing this mission for the next fucking hour, because I'm going to kill all of these guys, and I'm just going to... I just developed this strategy where you'd use Orc Bane on the Orcs, because you aren't high level enough to get Uruk-hai Bane to use it on the Uruk-hai, so you use that on the Orcs, get Perfect Mode, go kill every Uruk-hai you can find until Perfect Mode runs out, and then get use Orc Bane again, and do that until you kill everybody, and you can basically get to level 10 in that one level. It's so much fun because it feels like you're not supposed to do it, because the enemies keep on coming, but they eventually stop, and it's this great feeling where it's like, I just slaughtered hundreds of fucking dudes. I killed their entire army just standing here blocking orcs until I got perfect mode and then killing all those motherfuckers.
That's
and it's
awesome.
it's just one of those moments in games where it's like you figure that out and you're like, I'm going to be doing this for the next hour of my life and it's going to be great because now I'm completely over leveled for the rest of the game.
No, I got to go back and play these games someday because they were a lot of fun. But we
should play co-op on Return of the King because they're really good co-op games.
Oh, I forgot I had that. We should totally do that when this podcast is over. In any case, I wanted to just point out, I've always thought the cover art for the Two Towers video game is my favorite game cover art of all time. I don't know why. I can't, look it up. It's blue and it's on the top. It's Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli in action poses. It's got the Lord of the Rings, gold fuck off font in the middle.
Yeah.
It's awesome. And man, it's so cool looking, and the blue on it, I don't know what it is. I've always loved that cover.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's really great. I never took note of that before, but I do. There's something interesting about it all being blue.
Yeah, well, because that's probably the most visually dynamic part of the films for me is Helm's Deep. But man, it's a good representation of that.
There's another game I got. I think this might be the last Lord of the Rings game I got, because they don't make that many anymore. There's that Lord of the Rings War in the North game that came out that I haven't played that's on the 360 that kind of got middling reviews. But there was one that came out after the Return of the King game called Lord of the Rings The Third Age, and it's sort of a turn-based Final Fantasy-ish type game. It's basically a Final Fantasy combat system, but you play as... this game's not terrible, but the really fucking dumb thing about it is that you don't play as the Fellowship, you play as these dudes who are right behind the Fellowship every single step of the way. So it's you play as not Aragorn, it's Beowulf or something like that. He's a Gondor swordsman. He stumbles across not Arwen, who's this elf, and she's a spellcaster. Then you get another not Aragorn, who's a Dunedain ranger. Then you get not Gimli. You get not Eowyn, who's this Rohan guy. There's you get all these characters who are not characters in the movies, but are clearly basically just characters from the movies. And you get them in your party, but the fucking stupid thing about it is that you're always right behind where the Fellowship is, and it's just this really dumb way to make a game, because it's just okay, we're in Rohan. It's I heard Aragorn's right over there. I forget why I think you might be trying to get the ring from Frodo to bring back to Gondor or something like that. I don't even remember why the fuck you're following the Fellowship around. But you're always following the Fellowship around. It's you're going into Moria and it's they're right over there. They're on the bridge of Khazad-dûm. It's we can see them. Oh, Gandalf just fell. Oh, they're gone. I guess we have to find a way around this. I think you even fight... I don't know how. I'm pretty sure you fight the fucking Balrogs.
What the fuck?
I'm trying to remember.
Do you jump down the pit with Gandalf?
You might. You might end up fighting with Gandalf against them, because there's a lot of parts in the game where you end up fighting with Aragorn or Legolas, and they're obviously they're really fucking badass, and all of your guys are it's I'm level 5, I do 25 damage every time I do normal attack. Then Aragorn's I'm going to use Wrath of Gileath and get a 5-hit combo that does 1,000 damage. It's well, why the fuck am I even here? I got this rusty fucking sword and some leather boots. And Aragorn's here with the fucking Anduril, the Flame of the West, and he just nuked all the enemies on the goddamn screen.
That would be if Halo 4 you played as Lasky.
Yeah, no, it's basically like that. It's just oh, the Master Chief's right over there. It's I'm gonna go get, okay, Master Chief's gone. I guess I have to mop up after him because they didn't kill every single goblin in the Mines of Moria. And you basically do that all throughout the game. It's you're on Pelennor Fields, and it's Legolas just killed that Mumakil. Oh, but not everybody on the Mumakil's dead. I guess I better go kill those guys. It's oh god. And then the other really shitty part about the game is that they didn't get a lot of the voice actors back, which is weird because they got basically everyone to do voices for Return of the King game. Because that's one of the fun things about that game is you unlock these little videos of interviews of Billy Boyd and Dominic Monaghan talking about them doing voice work for Merry and Pippin, Elijah Wood and Sean Astin talk about it, and Ian McKellen has an interview on there too. And it was really fun to watch. It's Third Age, just no, they didn't get any of those guys back. So you'll have a scene where it's Bearthor walks into it's the scene in Two Towers in Helm's Deep, where Aragorn and Legolas are arguing, and Legolas is like, these guys have seen too few winters and stuff like that. It's like, but Aragorn's like, they need to fight, or whatever. And you walk into that scene, and it's just like, it's so obvious that the audio is just ripped from the movie, so it's like, oh god. And it's like, this just immediately takes me out of the game. And then also they'll just pull lines where they don't belong. Like, you'll be in a fight, and then all of a sudden, like, Aragorn will say some line from the movie that's like, from like Fellowship of the Ring, and I'm in Return of the King right now. It's like, I know, I've watched the movies enough that I know where these lines come from, and as you pull them out from the wrong places, it seems so fucking out of place.
So that's the Third Age game?
Yeah, this is the Third Age.
Okay.
Then, although I will say one of the other kind of the best part of the game, honestly, is after you sort of beat a section, like, you know, you beat the Rivendell section, then you get it unlocks this mode where you can play through a bunch of battles from that section from the point of view of the enemies. So you can play as like the orcs and stuff like that in these turn-based battles, and that's the most fun because eventually you get to play as a cave troll, or then you get to play as the Balrog in one section, and that's a lot of fun. But the best part of that is that when you do those, it feels like because you unlock them as you beat the sections, but it feels like you're supposed to play those after you've beaten the game, because when you do that, it unlocks these really good weapons. So it's like, once you play as the Balrog, I remember you unlock a sword for your main dude, Barithor, that's ridiculously powerful. It's like one of the most powerful swords in the game. You don't get another sword until that's better, until you get to like the Return of the King section. So you go through the entire Two Towers using this like really badass sword you unlock from that section. So it's like, okay, I'm in another fight with like 5 orcs. I can just kill them all basically in one turn because my guy is so goddamn powerful because I got the sword. So it's like, even that, like, the combat system was just kind of broken. It was this really, really dumb game that I played a lot of because it's really long. It's just like, every step of the way I was like, why am I still playing this game? I know everything that happens. None of these characters are interesting because they're just copy and pasted versions of characters from the movies.
Yeah.
It's like, why the fuck am I still playing this goddamn game?
Well, anyway, we got pretty off track with our video game discussion, so want to get back to...
There were Lord of the Rings video games, they're all movie licensed.
Right, no, it's fine.
Yeah.
But, no, it definitely defined sort of the period, that if you were watching the movies, you had things like the games that were really fun. And I'm still waiting for someone to kind of come out and make, like, the ultimate Lord of the Rings games, because I think it could be done really easily. But it'd be not easily.
Yeah, I wouldn't say... I mean, it's like, it's a game waiting to be made, but it's going to take a lot of effort to make it.
I know. I've always thought, like, it would be neat if Bethesda did, like, a Skyrim-esque thing for Lord of the Rings, where they just build Middle-earth, and the main quest line would be the Lord of the Rings, but you could just explore Middle-earth. It'd be fun. Well,
I mean, actually, one of the interesting things is that EA still has, as far as I'm aware, EA still has licensed Lord of the Rings games. I think that War for the North was EA licensed, and EA owns BioWare, so...
Oh, BioWare could...
BioWare, EA, I mean, BioWare made Dragon Age Origins, like, 3 or 4 years ago, and that was an awesome fantasy world-esque RPG. BioWare should make a fucking Lord of the Rings RPG.
That'd be great.
And one of the things that, like, I kind of want to play War in the North, but I know it's not a good game just based on all the stuff I've seen of it, but it's like, I like the idea that it's like, you don't necessarily need to play as the main characters, and you don't also necessarily need to be playing as people who are like 5 steps behind the main characters, because there's so much shit going on in the Lord of the Rings universe at the time. It's just like, just let me interact with that stuff. Like, you can make another story set in the Lord of the Rings universe around the same period and still have it be really interesting.
Yeah.
They just choose not to do that or fail in doing it.
Right. In any case, you want to talk about the movies now?
Sure, why not? It's
All right.
been long enough.
It has. So let's talk about The Fellowship of the Ring, movie 1 from 2001.
Yes.
And just in terms of just how we're talking about these movies, you should probably note up front, we'll be talking about the extended cuts.
Yeah, because I can't remember what's in the theatrical compared to the extended. Like, I don't remember what scenes are in the extended that weren't in the theatrical, because ever since I got the extended cuts, I've watched those versions at least like within like that thing where it's like I'll have a week session where I'll just watch all the movies. I've done that at least 4 times that I can remember with the extended. So
no, I always watch the extended. I've seen the theatrical versions once since they first came out on DVD, and that was
it's probably about the same for me.
When they first came out on Blu-ray, I got the theatrical cuts. I only watched them like once or twice, so I'm a little more familiar. But even then, I can't remember all of it. There's the extended versions are the movies at this point.
Yeah, for me, especially Fellowship and Two Towers. The Return of the King, I could kind of remember some scenes. Like, I can remember that the Saruman scene wasn't in there in the mouth of Sauron, but there's like
really awkward cuts around them.
Yeah, there's so many like just little moments that's like that really kind of fill out those movies for me that the actual cuts don't have. I vaguely recall they don't have.
So in any case, Fellowship of the Ring. let's talk about it. I guess just up front, sort of, what's your overall impression of this one as its own movie?
I think Fellowship's probably my favorite as its own movie, because I think it deals with the characters almost entirely. And when it does do the action, I really like the action. Like, I really like Moria. I really like the fight at the end of like Amon-In, where Aragorn. I just love that shot of Amon-In where Frodo runs off, and then Aragorn sort of turns to the camera and like puts the sword up in front of his face, and then like swings it, and then starts killing the Uruk-hai. It's one of my favorite shots in the movie. It's great. It's just such a great ramp up to the battle.
It is. But I think that's where Fellowship is my favorite too. Is that not only does it have all sort of the beginning stuff with Bilbo and the Shire, which is really compelling to me, but it's the Fellowship in action all together. And that's what's great about it. And especially, I think for me, the emotional heft of the last half hour of Fellowship is some of the greatest stuff in the series, because
I agree.
You don't just have Boromir dying, but you have the Fellowship being splintered and sort of this sense of hopelessness. But the thrust of the story is about hope. And it's just like, that's what The Lord of the Rings is to me.
Yeah.
And it does it so well. I mean, all the stuff at the end, like that scene where Aragorn, is clasping Frodo's hand and saying, "I would have gone with you to the mouths of, more of Mount Doom.
Yeah.
I would have gone with you to the very end." And just that sense of melancholy of, we have to go separate ways now. It's great. It's so well done.
Yeah, there's so... Well, I think the reason why The Fellowship is my favorite is because it deals with sort of the smaller scale stuff. Like, the action scenes are smaller scale. The character stuff is smaller scale. It's like, it feels a lot more focused because it's the beginning and nothing like... And everything doesn't splinter off, and you have... And I mean, not saying the other movies are bad by any stretch of imagination, but this is sort of the section of the story I like the most.
Right.
Yeah.
It is hard to differentiate them. I mean, on other days of the week, I sometimes think Two Towers is my favorite because it's got fucking Helm's Deep. And you can't really beat Helm's Deep. But, a lot of good things.
Yeah.
So. Alright, so Fellowship of the Ring. Do we want to sort of talk about the story as adaptation? Because Fellowship is probably the most changed.
Yeah, because they cut a lot of stuff out of Fellowship.
Right. I mean, people sort of cite Two Towers as having the biggest changes because of the stuff with Faramir. But that's pretty minor in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, because people always bring up the Faramir stuff, and I'm like... Faramir's not that big. Like, he's not this, like, really, really important character. They do change him, but
they change him to get back to the original. It's sort of like the changes with Aragorn, where Aragorn's very different, but he ends up in the same place.
Yeah. Faramir, like, he starts out as this total dick, but he doesn't in the book. But Faramir kind of sins and sort of ends up in the same place that he is in the book by the end. And one of the reasons why I don't care that they changed Faramir is because I really like the movie version of Faramir. Especially because there's I think it's in the Two Towers Extended Edition, where there's a scene with him and Boromir at Osgiliath before Boromir leaves. And it's like you sort of like fill out the Denethor, Faramir, Boromir like family.
It's a great scene.
I can't believe they cut that scene.
Yeah,
it makes those characters.
Well, I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but that's the most important scene in any of the extended cuts to me, because without it, The Two Towers actually, I will say, is a pretty flawed movie in its theatrical version, because Faramir makes no fucking sense in the theatrical cut. But when you add that and a couple other moments in the extended, he's one of the most dynamic characters in the trilogy.
Yeah, no, definitely. And then also that scene just makes Boromir for me, where it's like, because now it's the first time you get to see Boromir not kind of just being a dick. Like, because Boromir's kind of a dick in the books, too. He tries to take the ring from Frodo and all that stuff, but you understand why he's doing that a lot more when you see that perspective of what Gondor is going through. Yeah. And it's like, love that scene.
I love it, too. But anyway, back to Fellowship.
Yeah, we got totally... Jesus, this is like the problem that I knew we were going to run into with this podcast. It's like, there's no way we're going to be able to focus this discussion because there's so much stuff.
So much great stuff. In any case, Fellowship of the Ring, the big change is really... The second half of Fellowship is pretty much Book 2 of Lord of the Rings. It's very close.
Yeah.
But Book 1 is basically sort of a more adult version of The Hobbit, I would say, in the Lord of the Rings, in book form. It's just a journey, and it's about getting there. It doesn't have to back again at that point, but it's just the there and sort of the very much methodical steps of the journey. It goes into a lot more detail than The Hobbit, but it's got kind of that same tone because you're with just hobbits for a while.
Yeah.
You eventually add Strider in, but it's pretty late in that section.
Yeah.
And it's just them getting to Rivendell, and a larger part them getting to Bree, because it takes them a long time to get to Bree.
Fuck yeah, no.
And basically that's what they changed, is that the big thing is that in the book, there's a big gap of time between when, like, Bilbo leaves and then Frodo leaves. Frodo winds up buying a house in Buckland.
Yeah, there's always the part that I forget when I, like, look at The Lord of the Rings as the books again, where it's like, goddamn, like, yeah, it was like years after Bilbo left before Frodo goes anywhere. I always forget that part because it always seems kind of weird.
And so they have all that. They have their adventures with Farmer Maggot and Tom Bombadil and the Barrow Wights, which is something I always forget is the Barrow Wights.
I always like the Barrow Wights.
It's really good. It's just, it's like, because it doesn't have anything to do with anything else ever. Yeah,
but it's how they get their daggers. It's like instead of Strider just kind of coming up, it's like I just happen to have a bunch of Hobbit-sized swords for you guys.
Yes, I feel like Strider probably carries around a lot of weapons with him.
Yeah.
But in any case, they cut most of that stuff out. There's a reference to Farmer Maggot. There's really no references to Tom Bombadil. Although, as Philippa Boyens notes in the special features, you can make the logical leap that because of the way the movie is edited with montage in that section, they could have stopped at Tom Bombadil's. Who knows?
Yeah.
They could have spent like 3 months at Tom Bombadil's. We just don't see it.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's sort of weird. There was outcry at the time for all this stuff being cut, and even my dad, because he'd spent his whole life reading Lord of the Rings, was a little, not perturbed, but he was kind of put off. Like, it was weird to him.
Yeah.
Because he just knew that story so well. But to me, it's like, it's so clear. That would have killed the movie!
Like, I just, like, every time, because it still comes up whenever I, like, see some of these discussions online, that, like, people are, like, still sore that Tom Bombadil got cut. I'm like, dude, when I, like, listened to those audiobooks with the Tom Bombadil stuff, like, I was a kid, I was like, this doesn't need to be here. Like, this, I mean, I like the Tom Bombadil stuff, I like that section, and it works a lot better in a book, because, again, it sort of gives you a sense of the journey, which is one of the really fun things about the Lord of the Rings books. But in a fucking movie, that would be terrible. That's like the one thing that I can't believe that people want in like the Lord of the Rings, at least the Peter Jackson versions of the movies. Like I could see if you made like an HBO miniseries, it's like sure, fuck it, we can do Tom Bombadil, but it's no, that would not have been. Like, that would have made that movie so fucking slow. It would have made it like an hour longer.
Yeah,
and
the whole thing is
I don't know if it's just me. I don't want to necessarily see some like middle-aged man running around the forest singing about him being Tom Bombadillo. Yeah. Fucking willows and shit like that. Just don't care that much.
No, I totally agree. And the thing for me is that the first hour of Fellowship is fantastic because it's so well paced.
Yeah,
it's very intense. Once Bilbo leaves and Gandalf starts uncovering secrets about the ring, it's pretty nonstop until you get to when Frodo is... Not even when Frodo is stabbed, until you get to Rivendell.
Yeah.
It's sort of this relentless trek, and that sense of pace is great. But that means they have to compress the timescale. So Frodo has to leave immediately. He has to just run out of his house. He has to, just run to Bree with his friends. He has to escape the Nazgul and all these things and get to Bree. And then when you get to Bree, he meets Strider, and then they're off again. And then just a lot of sort of really fast-paced, still getting the broad strokes of the story in there and still doing a lot of good character work, establishing the 4 hobbits and then Strider. But it's about getting them there in sort of an intense fashion. Yeah. And that's still 90 minutes of the finished film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's half the movie. And so can you imagine, and it's half the movie and it's probably a fourth of what's in that section of the book. Yeah. If they did all that, that would be like 8 movies.
I don't necessarily want to see the whole section of Frodo just sitting around town doing nothing. Like, that's always when it played the games based on the books, it's just like, God, leave the fucking Shire! Jesus Christ! Like, there's not like even when you're making the game, they just like would spend forever in the game in the fucking Shire. Just leave! I don't want to spend 5 hours in the goddamn Shire watching Frodo futz around complaining about Sackville Bagginses. That's not the exciting part of the Lord of the Rings. I don't know why you put that in the game. Thank God they cut it out of the fucking movie because it wouldn't work in that format at all. It would have been fucking awful.
It would have been terrible. But like we said, once you get to Rivendell, then this movie at least pretty much just becomes the book.
You forgot the most tragic change of all. The other one that comes up all the fucking time that I don't get.
I think
they changed Glorfindel to Arwen. How could they do that? Glorfindel was so goddamn important. How could they change it to another character that's actually important to the overall arc of the story and really significant to Aragorn personally as a character? How could they take out Glorfindel and put in Arwen, who everybody loves? Glorfindel's so cool. God, I can't stand people with their Glorfindel shit.
I totally get it, and what's funny to me is that I'm so removed from that because I think what they did with Arwen in this series was brilliant.
Yeah, no, I really liked. I think the biggest changes they made that are sort of really significant is the stuff they did with Aragorn and Arwen. and I really like it.
Yeah.
I think it adds a nice, strong character thrust throughout the movies and gives you a strong character arc that works really well for a movie.
And it's not even... Yes, they change where she comes in, but they just took the broad strokes from the appendices, and they just they put it back into the story, because the whole idea is that in sort of the history of the fictional history of Lord of the Rings text is the Red Book of Westmarch, and then the appendices are supplementary works, and the story of Aragorn and Arwen, Frodo did not know when he wrote in the Red Book of Westmarch, so you get that out. But the movies are just the story, so they put that stuff back in, and... Putting Arwen in there for Glorfindel, that probably was not an obvious change, so I think that was kind of genius that they thought of it.
I agree, because it would, like, if Glorfindel had been there, it'd just be like, I don't know who this guy is important, and he's just going to disappear. This guy's not significant. But
then by putting her there, it means that by the time you get to Rivendell, we already know and like her, and are invested in her, and Aragorn.
Yeah, and you add that nice subplot throughout the movie that gives you something to go back to that sort of like can change the pacing up when you just like, let's like have something with Aragorn and Arwen and let's like sort of develop that a little bit more.
It's, I mean, honestly, it's a really smart move, and it kills like 8 birds with one stone is to swap for Arwen for Glorfindel. Because as you said, Glorfindel, whatever. If you like him in the book, that's fine. But at most, he would be just a one-off character in the movies. Because he's a one-off character in the books.
Yeah, like in the Lord of the Rings animated version, like the Ralph Bakshi film, they have Glorfindel there. It's like he's there for that scene. It's like okay, bye. Like I don't remember how this goes down. I think this goes down this way in the book too. But it's like Glorfindel isn't even on the horse with Frodo. Like I think he gets off and like has the horse go off with Frodo across the river to Rivendell. This is like Glorfindel isn't even there for most of it. He's like. It's like, hey, what's up, Aragorn? What's up, Glorfindel? We need to get this dude over to Rivendell. Can you help him along? Sure. Smacks the horse's butt before it leaves. It's like, bye, Glorfindel.
Yeah.
Never going to see your ass again. But apparently he's so critically important that people decry his missing from the movies all the fucking time on the internet. It drives me insane.
All right.
Fucking Glorfindel.
After that, once they get to Rivendell, which is technically actually the end of Book 1 of Fellowship of the Ring, this is sort of the midway point of the movie. After Council of Elrond is when the intermission happens in the film. And
where are we going?
Yeah, great line. In any case, so it really just becomes pretty much a pretty close adaptation of the book from there. Council of Elrond obviously is cut down because that's a long part of the book.
Yeah.
But it's
and
cut
you get
down, but
some
it's
of
still
the really critical information, like in the prologue scene and stuff like that.
So it's still all there. The thrust of the scene is still there.
Yeah.
Same as the thrust of the mini meetings chapter, that he meets Bilbo and he gets Sting and he gets the
Mithril.
Yep. It's awesome.
Yep.
So Mithril, which
feather, hard as dragon scale.
Mithril always makes me think of Final Fantasy, and then when I'm playing Final Fantasy, it always makes me think of Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, it's kind of the same way, and it always drives me insane in Final Fantasy. At least the older Final Fantasy games are spelled with a Y. I'm like,
it's weird.
Not spelled with a fucking Y. What are you people talking about? I always wonder why that is. I don't get the sense that in Japan, Lord of the Rings is like a thing. I've never got that sense from anything other than Final Fantasy, so I don't know if they like localized that to be Mithril or what. But it's always fucking weird. It's always weird when I find adamantium sometimes in fantasy games. It's like,
really?
That happens sometimes. It's like, what the fuck is this doing here? Is Wolverine around the corner? Like, what the?
I feel like the localization guy must just be some really like
really nerd. Super nerdy. It's like I'm just going to come up. It's like you're going to find some unobtainium next. It's like you got an unobtainium chainmail suit.
Annoying white guy to stop you from using it.
Yeah.
In any case,
we keep on getting fucking off track.
Yeah. So again, the Council of Elrond scene, really good, sort of brief version of that scene, and then from there, I mean, it's all the broad strokes, the crows that come in, the pass of Caradhras.
Yeah.
The only big thing they cut from this section, I would say, is the warg attack, but they actually moved that into Two Towers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So rather effectively there too. I would say.
I agree. That's because again, that would have just sort of. It would have ruined the action scenes for Moria if you had like this weird other smaller action scene right before you get to Moria.
Yeah, and I think you have to single Moria out as being probably the best fantasy action sequence of all time. I mean, I don't even know what the runner-up would be. It's unbelievable how good the Moria material is from once they enter to once they leave. And
or even like before they enter, just all the stuff like once they enter the set that has like the door and then the lake, it's like that's where Moria starts. All that stuff's so fucking cool.
It's great, and like the whole scene on the stairs where they're just trying to. It's this big set piece where they're just trying to get from one set of stairs to the next set, and there's a little gap, and they have to jump and be thrown and all this stuff. And it's like even I've seen the movie like 25 times. I'm still on the edge of my seat during that scene because it's like. It's so well done.
Yeah.
And there's arrows flying everywhere, and Legolas is going to town with his arrows, and then they get to the bridge of Khazad-dûm, and fuck, is that a sad fucking scene. Even when you know what's coming, even when you can quote it and make jokes about it, when you're watching it, Gandalf's death fucking hurts.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because, for one, he gets to be the biggest badass in the world before he goes. But then he's gone, and probably one of the best pieces of music in the series starts, the Howard Shore music. And
the Superman trailer music.
Yep. And you... They did use this music in the trailer for Man of Steel, which is so weird.
It's just like, as soon as I saw that trailer, I was like, is this Lord of the Rings? Wait, this is the music that plays when Gandalf dies. Like, it's such a good piece of music that I could, like, completely out of context just watching that trailer. I was like, I know exactly where in the fucking Fellowship of the Ring this music plays.
Yeah.
That's impressive for a piece of music to be that iconic from a film that I'm not just like, I'm pretty sure that's from Lord of the Rings. It's like, no, I know the moment in the movie this plays, and I can recall it instantly as soon as I hear that music.
Well, it's edited so well here where Frodo has his, no! And
I like how it's like, he goes no, and it sort of like fades out so you don't like get the...
And that's when the sound drops and the music builds. And
it's fucking great, and then it's like they're running up the stairs and you have the arrows hitting the wall.
Yeah.
It's like, ting!
I mean, we have to obviously praise Ian McKellen for this scene, because he's phenomenal just giving his speech to the Balrog. But I think what makes the emotions of that scene really work for me from the grief angle is Elijah Wood and Viggo Mortensen.
Yeah.
Because Elijah Wood just doing the full-on, he's broken from what he just saw.
Yeah.
And Viggo Mortensen, Aragorn, is just trying to hold it together because he knows now he has to be the leader. And that sudden sense of duty, imparted upon him.
Yeah.
It's really well done.
Yeah. Although then also I really love, like, earlier to that point when they go and they, with the well and Gandalf reading from the book, fucking love that part.
Yes.
Like, we cannot get out. They are coming. Yeah.
Boom! And the drums
cannot get out.
Yeah.
It's fucking great.
So much great stuff in Moria, and I have no idea how they shot all that stuff because none of it looks faked. I mean, it looks like they found the mines of Moria and went and shot there.
Yeah, just like that really great moment when they get into like Khazad-dûm proper and it like sort of like lights up a bit and you see all the pillars, but it's still like pitch black.
Yeah.
And sort of just in your mind, you can imagine when the doors were there, if they would have been like fully lit and there had been torches everywhere, and it would have looked fucking amazing.
Yeah.
But now it's just like this like desolate, rundown place.
I wonder if there's any way they could do a glimpse of that in The Hobbit, like Moria at its height.
I mean, they could at the end because Balin goes to Khazad-dûm, so they could follow him a little bit and be like, this is what happens to Balin.
Yep.
Balin went on to go run the mines of Moria, and then eventually he got fucking killed, and his tomb would get smashed by a cave troll.
It's too bad. Balin did not deserve what he got.
Yeah.
In any case. So that's sort of that whole sequence. And then we get into Lothlorien, which I love how they did Lothlorien in the movies. And then the person who makes this section work is obviously Cate Blanchett, who I'm pretty sure was put on this earth to play Galadriel. And she's a great actress in everything. She's just a phenomenal actress. She's a chameleon. She can do anything. But I think she's actually an elf. I think she's an elf queen. They
didn't even put on the ear makeup. It's just you've never noticed it before.
They put makeup on in all of her other roles.
Yeah, exactly. They just CGI out the pointy ears.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you get that feeling when you watch her that she's just like, that's
yeah,
Galadriel?
No, exactly. That's just Galadriel. I'm totally with you on that.
And it works really well. Again, the Lothlorien sets, amazing.
Yeah, those are my favorite sets. It looks like that's what like Lothlorien looks like. Like it's just like so perfectly breathes out what like an elvish home should be, especially in those kinds of elves. I like the distinction between Lothlorien and Rivendell, where like Rivendell's so much more welcoming and homey, and it's like you get the sense like you could go.
It's the last homely house.
You could go to take a vacation at Rivendell. It's like a spa. Then Lothlorien is like it's a really cool place. You might not want to go there because they might kind of fuck you up.
Yeah,
they're really like kind of nice people sometimes, but if you get on their bad side, Galadriel's she might fuck you up.
Yeah. And then you have the whole gift-giving scene, which is really well done, how they do it here. It's another thing that they actually cut in the extended version, or in the theatrical version, which you cannot imagine watching the extended cut.
Yeah, that's one of those scenes where I do remember it isn't there. It occurs to me every time I watch the extended cut that's not in the theatrical edition. I'm like, how is this not in the theatrical
edition?
Because
it's kind of crucial, because that's where Legolas gets his bow. Yeah. That's where Aragorn gets
his knife.
Yeah. there's some seeds, sort of sown there, and it's only a couple minutes.
Yeah, and that's where fucking Frodo gets the even star that he needs to use.
Well, that is in the theatrical.
Oh, is that part of the theatrical?
What's so weird is in the theatrical they just do him getting the even star, and it's a really it's just an awkward cut that once you see the extended, you see how they cut around it, and they kind of had to do it awkwardly because the scene as written and shot doesn't allow for that.
Yeah,
but. It's great. It's got that wonderful shot from the trailer of the 8 elves up to the 8 members of the Fellowship giving them their gifts and stepping back.
Yeah,
and it's cool. It's also where they get all their elven brooches and the cloaks and these things, which is crucial in the Two Towers when they use it to become a rock.
Yeah, not lightly do the leaves of Lothlorien fall.
Yes, lots of good stuff. In any case, Lothlorien's cool, and then you've got them going down the river. And the shot that's so fucking iconic and great is the massive statues they see. Do you remember the names?
No,
okay, I don't. It's one of those obscure Lord of the Rings names.
Yeah, that's one of the ones I can't remember.
But man, is that a cool thing? Where I'm pretty sure those were just models they shot, but it looks real. And it's like if you've ever been to Mount Rushmore, it reminds you of that, only better.
It reminds me of the Jason the Argonauts movie where they have I always think those statues should come alive. Because if you have a statue that looks like that fucking awesome, it should come alive and they should have to fight it. But they should have changed that from the book. Just throwing that in there, this really big action scene before you get to Almanin. This oh shit, the Gondorian statue's coming alive, we gotta go kill it. Gimli, get your axe.
Yeah. In any case, a lot of cool stuff, them going down the river. Another tidbit from the behind the scenes is that Legolas, in the movie, obviously Legolas is in a boat with Gimli, but John Rhys Davies was not in the boat. It was his scale double.
Yeah.
And their boat sunk while they were going down the river, and the stunt double almost died, and Orlando Bloom, I guess, saved his life. But their boat kind of hit a rock or something. It went under, and he was pulling, and I guess he was stuck, and they had to get other people there to pull him up. And
it's when you watch those bonus features, it's insane that all those people survived. I do specifically remember the point in Two Towers where they say Viggo Mortensen almost died when he's wafting down this river. And it's he almost drowned. Viggo Mortensen almost fucking died.
It's so weird.
Yeah, I have another. Jesus Christ, being an actor is fucking dangerous.
Yeah,
I had no idea.
I actually have another cool story to tell because we're about to talk about Amon Hen and the death of Boromir and Sean Bean doing some really great work there. So I want to tell Sean Bean's story from the behind the scenes, which is that you remember the scene in the movie where it's right after Gandalf dies and Frodo falls in the snow and the ring is there and Boromir.
That's before Gandalf dies.
That's before Cardras. Oh yeah. In any case, but he sees the ring and he says, so much trouble for such a little ring, and he, they have to convince him to give it back to Frodo. Really good scene. Yeah. They actually shot that in the mountains like that. Here's the thing about Lord of the Rings: if it looks like they're in the middle of a massive mountain range that is not easily accessible by humans, they were probably in the middle of a massive mountain range that is not easily accessible by humans.
Yeah,
and so they had to get to that spot by helicopter. Turns out Sean Bean has a massive fear of helicopters. He just hates it. And so
that is a wise fear to have. I would be afraid of helicopters too. That blade will fuck you up.
Yeah. So, but flying up there, he was really nervous. He hated going back down. He says during that scene, he was petrified the whole scene thinking about the helicopter. And so he said, I will never get in a helicopter again. I'm not going to do it. And they said, well, but Sean, we have other scenes in Mountain. He's just I will climb there. And he did. He climbed. So there are other scenes where they're in mountain ranges like this. And what he did is he took a ski lift as far up as it would take him. And then he hiked the rest of the way and rock climbed. And so it took him hours. He had to get up at 2 in the morning to get up there for a 10 a.m. shoot. And so they have this story where I think it's Orlando Bloom saying we were in a helicopter flying up and we look down and we see this little speck and it's Sean Bean in his full Boromir.
Yeah, that's I was hoping he was already dressed up because in my head that would look so fucking awesome because he's got the big ass shield. He's climbing up the mountain.
He had the shield, he had the full costume, and he was climbing up the mountain, just rock climbing to get to the set. That is dedication.
Yeah, Sean Bean is a fucking badass.
Yes.
He's kind of a pussy, but he's a fucking badass when he's a pussy.
Yeah. Okay, so anyway, Amon Hen, this is where you have the Uruk-hai finally arrive and they have a big fight. Lots of good stuff, really great climax, and poor Boromir.
Yeah, poor Boromir.
Gets fucked up. Yep. He does some shitty stuff to Frodo, but he makes up for it by dying to save Merry and Pippin.
Yeah. It's a weird thing. The last time I watched this movie, Boromir's death hit me way harder than it ever did before.
Really?
Boromir's death is always really sad. I don't know what it was. This is that time I was God damn, Boromir, this sucks. You should not have died. You were a cool dude.
Yeah.
This is like, you did some bad stuff, but you made up for it. And it's like, I don't know why that scene hit me so hard the last time I watched the movie.
I just think they handle it so well with, Boromir gets, kind of gunned down with the arrows. I mean, it's brutal for one. It's arrow after arrow after arrow, and then Aragorn has the big fight with the chief Uruk-hai, which is
Lurtz
awesome.
is what they named him. He's
Lurtz.
not a character from the book, but
I know.
I have no idea how I fucking know that.
Yeah. Lurtz is cool, and he, beheads Lurtz, and then he goes and finds Boromir, and you have just that. This is the scene that breaks me, is Boromir going, my captain, my king, and then my brother, my captain, my king, and like Aragorn, because it's funny because this is the moment where Aragorn should be comforting Boromir, but Boromir comforts Aragorn, and I think that's what makes the scene work so well, is Boromir's sheer dedication, and this also goes back to changes they made in characters and giving Aragorn more of an arc, is that Boromir's death is really what kicks off Aragorn's arc to definitely becoming king.
Yeah.
Because I think that's the moment when he sees his doubt starts to go away.
Yeah.
He obviously struggles with doubt throughout the series, but if it weren't for Boromir saying what he says to him when he dies, I don't think Aragorn would have sort of the courage to do what he needs to do.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's in the books, that character arc's not there at all. Like, Aragorn's already again, he's carrying the shards of Narsil with him all the time. In the books, he's totally accepted. He wants to become king. He just needs to get a way to do it. Yeah. And so, them putting in that character arc for the movies is, again, probably the most significant change. And I do understand why a lot of people don't like it. But again, I think it works so much better for a movie to have this dramatic character arc. And I think the movie version of Aragorn is a really well fleshed out, likable, dynamic character. Yeah,
we'll get to characters later on. But yeah, no, it's very true. In terms of changes at the end of Fellowship of the Ring here, really the only thing is they shuffled some stuff around. Boromir dies at the beginning of the Two Towers, technically, but it's all one book. You
can cut them however you want.
Right. So they just moved that up. They didn't move it up. They just redid the chronology so it all happens at the same time, because obviously Boromir's death provides a really solid climax for film one. And then Frodo and Sam go off, and
Sean Astin almost loses his foot.
Yeah. Bad shit happens, and that's Fellowship of the Ring. Damn good movie.
Yep. Damn good movie.
Two Towers. Also a damn good movie.
Also a damn good movie.
Two Towers is a damn intense movie.
Mm-hmm.
Two Towers is where, Two Towers is very much follows the Empire Strikes Back model of things have gotten really fucking shitty, and it doesn't look like they're going to get better. Mm-hmm. And then there's a slight ray of hope at the end.
Yeah.
So, I guess I
love the part when Gimli gets put in carbonite and gets sent off to Jabba the Hutt's palace.
Oh, I know. Or Legolas is just torn up about it. Gimli finally said he loves him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I know.
Wouldn't it be Gimli saying, I know? I know!
Yeah.
I can imagine Orlando Bloom saying, I love you, in that voice, in the Princess Leia voice. Way too clearly.
Yeah. That's weird. That's really weird.
Okay.
We should get back to the actual fucking movie instead of this weird hybrid we just created.
From a narrative standpoint, the big change in the Two Towers is just a structural thing, is that the books are told out of chronological order. So book 3, which is the first book of Two Towers, is just the Aragorn, Legolas and Gimli story, and then the Merry and Pippin stuff.
Yeah.
And then book 4 is all of Frodo and Sam up to the end of the Shelob material. So, really, they only adapt about half of each book of Two Towers for the Two Towers movie. It's not a lot of pages, actually. It's sort of like people talk about the Hobbit movies won't be doing much of the Hobbit book, each one. Yeah. Two Towers does not do a whole lot of Lord of the Rings. It's a pretty limited amount of story, but it feels really big because it's a very important part. You have to flesh it out. And so instead of presenting it out of chronological order like that, they do it all chronologically. They reshuffle it, so what's happening with Frodo is shown as going on, what's happening with Aragorn and Gimli and Legolas, and they just use the timeline from the appendices to match that all together.
Yeah, they just intercut between the two
teams. Right. So the Frodo and Sam stuff is pretty much identical to how you know it until they meet Faramir, and then the big change is Faramir, because this is going to be the climax of film 2 for these characters, Faramir has to become an obstacle, because otherwise they'd be going nowhere.
Yeah.
So Faramir has to become a bit of an obstacle. He takes them to Osgiliath. None of that happens, but we'll get to that part of the story, but I think it's pretty compelling stuff. And then on the Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli side, really it's pretty close. You could argue they make Helm's Deep bigger than it is, But Helm's Deep is a big event. I mean, people forget that in the book. If you read the chapter, it's really well written as a battle scene. I mean, it's pretty rousing. The big change with Helm's Deep, though, is that, for one, they also sort of add an arc for Theoden, in that in the book, he intends to fight the orcs always. He's going to ride out and meet them.
Yeah.
In the movie, they're going to hide at Helm's Deep. And then the other thing is that the elves come to help the men at Helm's Deep, and that does not happen in the book. But I think it's really fucking cool in the movie.
Yeah, and it's also, like, that's another change that a lot of people kind of get up in arms about. I'm like...
But it's very true to the spirit of the book, because what I think Hull... I forget the name of the character, but the main elf, Haldir, who comes, he says, we're honoring the last alliance.
Yeah.
Oh, that makes sense. You know? Elves
should have been Glorfindel, though. Glorfindel should have gone to Helm's Deep at the very least. Glorfindel would have been there.
That is kind of a big change, though. He dies, and Galadriel has no husband anymore.
No, Galadriel's husband is Celeborn.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Haldir's like the captain of the
They look similar, sorry.
Yeah, Celeborn's like barely even in the movies,
okay.
I think. Yeah.
In any case. So, those are sort of all the changes, but let's talk about the stories. You want to start with the Frodo and Sam side? It's a little simpler?
Sure, yeah. They find Gollum, and they walk.
Yeah, and I guess we'll talk about Gollum as a character and a technical achievement later, when we talk about characters, but... Boy, it's like Yoda in Empire Strikes Back. If Gollum didn't work, the entire trilogy would be kaputs.
Yeah, no, definitely.
But he does, and that makes this stuff in the Two Towers really compelling.
Mm-hmm.
And just I like all the locations they shoot in for their journey to Mount Doom is really barren. I don't know what these places are, but they're depressing places to look at, and they really help the atmosphere of the films.
Yeah, I can't remember the name of the... Do you remember the name of the bog that they go through?
The Dead Marshes.
The Dead Marshes, that's it. It's like, where the fuck is... Like, that looks like the most terrifying goddamn place in the world. I mean, I know there aren't, like, elven corpses in the actual... wherever that marsh is in real life.
Yeah.
That doesn't matter, dude. That place looked fucking terrifying.
Yeah. So what do you think about this material with Frodo and Sam in Two Towers?
I really like it. I think even though, it's kind of one of those things where not a lot really happens, they do basically just find Smeagol and just walk for a long time. But there's a lot of good just sort of character stuff establishing the relationship between Frodo, Sam, and Smeagol. You get Elijah Wood kind of slowly being more like despondent gazes into the camera.
Which he does really well.
Yeah.
People make fun of that. He's good at it. I don't think most actors could do that convincingly.
Yeah. He does really start selling how heavy the burden is for him of the ring.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really like this section. I can't believe I couldn't remember this called the Dead Marshes, because I really like that section, both in the book and in the movie.
Yeah. That's a good section, and I like how they do it in the film. They have that shot of him falling into the water was in every trailer, too. I don't know if you remember that, but that's just like dramatic shot of Frodo keeling over.
Yeah.
In any case, a lot of good stuff there. And, there's not a whole lot to talk about point by point with that. Mm-hmm. Just sort of a general atmosphere thing. I mean, it's an interesting balancing act, because obviously I think the stuff with Aragorn and Gimli and Legolas and Rohan is the attraction of the Two Towers. That's what makes this movie stand out, and that's the best stuff.
The stuff you play in the game.
Right. So I think it speaks to how well Peter Jackson and company did this movie, that the stuff with Frodo and Sam does not feel like a distraction when you watch it. It feels like a very organic part of the movie that you enjoy seeing.
Because technically that is the most important stuff that's really happening, even though nothing's really happening. But the most important thing is getting the ring to Mordor. Right. That's what you're watching.
Yeah. So, and that's an interesting balancing act that Two Towers plays. And I think they are wise to probably prioritize in the Two Towers movie the Aragorn material.
Yeah,
for movie purposes, that makes sense.
The most dynamic.
But so the stuff with Frodo and Sam plays this sort of interesting dual function where it helps break up the pacing. Because if it was just Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli doing sort of this war movie, it might be kind of overwhelming. Mm-hmm. But when you can cut back to Frodo and Sam, which it's very intense too, but it's calmer. It's more sort of methodical. It kind of makes for a nicely paced movie.
I agree.
So, works really well. And then they meet Faramir, and David Wenham is the actor, and I think he's great. And Faramir's a good character, and I like how they do it. I think, obviously, a lot of the broad strokes are still there. I mean, initially, Faramir does not trust them. Once he finds out who they are, he immediately does in the book. But Philippa Boyens makes a good point in the bonus features, which is that in the book, when Faramir hears their whole story, and he immediately trusts them and says of the ring, I would not pick that up if it lay by the wayside within my reach. That does rob the ring of its power. in terms of trying to build it, especially because the Two Towers for Frodo is all about what the ring is doing to him. If you have a character just walk on screen and be like, the ring? Fuck it.
Fuck that. I'm not going to touch that thing. It's supposed to corrupt the hearts of man? Not me. I'm Faramir. Golden Boy.
It wouldn't work. And I think
agree.
The way they do it here, where they allow Faramir to, as Samwise says, show his true colors at the end of the film, and very strongly show those colors, but still having him give in to temptation in a certain sense makes the ring that much more of a villain, and it leads into Return of the King very well, and it hammers home the point of the Two Towers, which is that Frodo is dealing with a lot.
I thought the point of the Two Towers was that there were two towers.
Yes.
It's actually more than two towers, but
I know.
There are lots of towers.
Yes, that's an interesting thing about the title of the Two Towers, is everyone has a different interpretation of what those towers are.
Yeah, I mean, I think the movie very much implies that it's the Tower of Orthanc and Barad-dûr.
Which makes the most sense to me.
Yeah, but I mean, Minas Tirith is a tower. Helm's Deep has a tower.
Right.
Yeah.
No, in any case.
I think trees, metaphorically, could be a tower, so Fangorn Forest, there's a bunch of towers in there.
Yeah.
Treebeard's a tower.
What do you think of the material in Osgiliath at the end? That's a pretty cool set, I think. And
I like the crumbling city of Osgiliath as a set, too.
I like that whole idea that the people of Gondor are so sort of proud and desperate that they will defend this worthless lump.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's the last sort of stronghold before the Pelennor Fields.
Yes.
And it's like, that's like their little, like... I do like it's like this sort of like just wrecked military zone where they have this like little outpost on this river, and it's like that's the last step that they need to defend, or else all the people from Mordor can get to Minas Tirith. So it's like, this is a little piece of shit, and it's just completely destroyed, but we have to hold it down.
Yeah, and changing it so Frodo and Sam go there also has this other dual function of setting up Gondor as a good, setting up and sort of providing a springboard into Return of the King, so that when that starts, we know the importance of Osgiliath, we know what they've been going through. There's more shorthand for it when Return of the King opens.
Yeah, I agree.
Because Return of the King has a lot to get through. I mean, it's a lot of text.
Yeah.
So, because it's got half of the Two Towers and then all of Return of the King. So in any case, really good stuff. Good ending. One of my favorite scenes in the whole series is the last scene of the movie. It's Frodo and Sam, sort of they're just, again, walking, and they've gotten away from Osgiliath, and it's Sam talking about, the stories that they may sing of them, and Frodo telling him, you'll be in those songs, you'll be in those stories. And Sam not believing him, but Frodo being very adamant, and realizing that Frodo kind of treated Sam like shit in this movie at some points, but the real Frodo, who doesn't always appear in this film, the real Frodo cares very much for Sam.
Yeah.
So it's a really touching moment to end the movie on. Actually, they end the movie on Gollum talking to himself about Shelob.
That's
has a very foreboding... Two Towers ends with this beautifully haunting shot, where it's them walking, and it pans up, and then you see just the dead lands of Mordor, and the Eye Tower, and Mount Doom, and there's flame, and the sky is black and red. It's terrifying.
Yeah.
And awesome.
Like, I always kind of like to think that Mordor really exists in New Zealand. Like, there's just, like, this crazy patch of just barren, black, desolate earth with this massive mountain just sitting in the middle of fucking New Zealand that nobody likes to go to. It's fucking terrifying.
That would be very funny.
Yeah.
Alright, so let's talk about the main thrust of the Two Towers, which is the Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli material, and then that intersects with Merry and Pippin and Treebeard.
And Gandalf the White.
Yes, Gandalf the White. I kind of forgot about that, but yes, Gandalf the White, obviously, big thrust of this movie is him coming back and helping them with their battles. And so the villain of this film, and they do sort of a clever thing here where they very much position him as the villain of film 2, the obstacle to be defeated, as Saruman. And the forces of Isengard.
Yeah.
And it works really well because there's only so much you can get out of an enemy who's just an eye on a tower.
Yeah, or like the abstract concept of evil and temptation.
Yeah.
It's like, does not necessarily make the most compelling film villain.
No.
But Christopher Lee definitely does.
Oh yeah, that scene, another great shot, which is just about revealing things, is when he and Wormtongue, they're in Isengard Tower, and they're talking, and Wormtongue is kind of complaining. He says, well, we can't fight them, we need an army of thousands, and then they walk out, and it's that great shot, just it's on Christopher Lee's head, the back of his head, and he says tens of thousands, and walks out, and there's just orcs everywhere, and it's just as far as the eye can see, and he just has this little smile. And it's Christopher Lee, man. Oh, he's good.
I love Christopher Lee. He's so good as Saruman. And one of the things I really love about sort of the Saruman, the villainous side of the thing, is they sort of like really push the like machine part of it, where he's like manufacturing Uruk-hai, and you see he's like he's tearing down Fangorn Forest to get the fuel, and he's like they're making all the swords, and I just love the design of Saruman's Uruk-hai with like the white hand, where they have like the shield with the 2 points on the end, and the sword that's just like it looks like this big fucking like straight butcher knife with just a spike at the end of it. And it's like, and again, with like the little book I had, the reason they have that spike is to like throw horsemen off of their horses. It's like, that's such a cool little fucking detail, because it looks awesome, but there's a reason, because they're going to fight the fucking Rohirrim. They're going to fight a lot of cavalrymen. They're the fucking riders of Rohan, so they need a little spike on their sword.
Makes sense.
Yep.
No, lots of good stuff with that, and it's also, I think, it's an important thing of keeping the themes of the book alive, which is that we talked last time that J.R.R. Tolkien was not fond of allegory, but real world events influenced how he wrote.
Yeah.
And obviously the sort of manufacturing of war was something that disturbed him, as it should disturb most people.
Yeah.
And they really get that point across very well in the movies.
The spiky fucking swords.
Yeah. So the enemy is well established. And obviously I think this is a good time to talk about Merry and Pippin and Treebeard, is that because Isengard works really well as a foe when Treebeard is one of your main characters.
Yeah.
Because he's not just chopping down trees, he's killing other Treebeards.
Yeah.
What the fuck is wrong with him?
Treebeard's fucking cool.
Of course he is.
I love Treebeard in this movie so much.
He's great. And I just think the Treebeard material could fall so flat so fast, but they do it so well in these movies. And, mad props to Merry and Pippin, Dominic Monaghan, and Billy Boyd. Basically, they just were sitting on a blue screen for this entire film, acting like sitting on a branch on a blue screen. Because, Treebeard hadn't been animated yet. They didn't know what he was going to be like. They did a really good job just sort of interacting with nothing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So good stuff. But main thrust of the movie, again, is Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas. They're sort of the stars here. That's why they get the box art on the game.
Yeah.
And it's just sort of... This movie is about the culture of Rohan, which they do really well. So many phenomenal characters. Eowyn, Eomer, and...
Yeah.
King Theoden and all the riders of Rohan. It's a lot of cool material here.
I agree. I really love... I love the setting of Rohan. I love how they... it's a lot of really flat plains, and then like Edoras, the city, the capital, it's like on that like little hill, and it's all made of wood. It's got like sort of the Viking-style hall at the top. Fucking love that. It's such a cool-looking set.
And it was really windy there whenever they shot there, so that's why like the flag blows off in the wind. It wasn't a creative decision; it just blew off in the wind.
That's why fucking Eowyn's her hair's always just all over the place when she's outside of Edoras.
She looks really cool with that too. Yeah. I don't know why, but no, Rohan is probably my favorite culture in the films, just because they're so cool, and I love all the characters and the fact that they do all of their stuff on horses, and horses are awesome. And I guess there was another production hurdle of getting that many horses together in one place. There really aren't, cultures of people in the world who ride that many horses.
Yeah, it's kind of exaggerated a little bit, but
yes,
yeah.
So anyway, cool stuff. But this is all about building up to the battle at Helm's Deep, and so The Two Towers is in many ways a war movie, and it does what all good war stories do, where the build-up is just as important as the execution itself.
Yeah.
And so a good hour there of The Two Towers is just them getting to Helm's Deep, and then just preparing for battle and just kind of wallowing in pity and doubt. Mm-hmm. But there's a big change on their way to Helm's Deep in that the wargs attack and they think Aragorn is killed.
Yeah, and Viggo Mortensen almost actually dies in the next scene.
What do you think of that whole section?
I think it's fine. I think it's kind of weird in a way that it's like, I don't know how necessary it really is to have Aragorn kind of maybe not die and then come back.
It's always been a part that I've never disliked, but I've always kind of questioned how much I need it.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. It's like, it doesn't feel like it necessarily... I mean, I'll take it for the really fucking cool shot of when Aragorn comes in and he opens the door and he's like dripping wet.
Oh, it's 100% worth it for that.
Yeah, that's like, it's worth it for that shot, but it's like intellectually, I don't know what the motivation... I guess... Maybe the motivation was to have a little, like, weird Arwen dream sequence, maybe, to remind you that that's still going on. I'm not sure.
That's something that I actually want to mention, is how they integrate Arwen into this movie is really clever and really artistically done. Because their original idea, which was a terrible idea, and I'm glad they abandoned it, is that Arwen would have been the one who comes in and leads the elves in Helm's Deep.
Yeah, weird. Instead of Haldir.
Yeah, that would have been really weird and stupid.
Yeah.
Because they
she would have had to... fucking be trekking to get all the way from Rivendell to Helm's Deep. Like, it took us, like, hours in movie time, and you just got here? We just found out that Helm's Deep was going to be besieged.
Right. It would not have worked. It would have been weird. But instead they have this sort of interesting flashback in the middle of the movie where they're sort of riding to Helm's Deep, and it starts out as sort of a flashback to their time together in Rivendell, right before the Fellowship leaves, and it transitions into dream sequence, and there's just sort of this beautiful ethereal quality to it that Liv Tyler really sells.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting point, is that Liv Tyler is not an actress who's been all that good in other movies. Peter Jackson got really good work out of her in these. She's kind of just born to play that part. She just seems like she like Kate Blanchett. She's an elf.
Yeah.
Elf maiden. And just I think those romantic scenes with them in the middle where it's all more, it's about their relationship, but it also hammers home Aragorn's sort of self-doubt in these moments. And it makes him more of a compelling character. It's just a really well done segment of the movie, I think.
Yeah. Although then they also throw in this weird sort of half romance between Aragorn and Eowyn that I always thought was also just kind of weird.
That's in the book.
Is it in the book?
That's absolutely in the book. That's why she goes to war. It's even more pronounced in the book. She goes to war with Gondor because she wants to die. That's how much she loves Aragorn, and that's how much
shit. Yeah, no, and that's when she meets Faramir and falls in love with Faramir. Okay, I remember that now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't really... that always felt like something that was added into the movies for some reason. That's kind of weird.
But
because it doesn't feel like it really needs to be in the movie to me.
No, I think they handled it better in Return of the King. There's a really good scene in Return of the King where he sort of tells her how it is, and she's sort of heartbroken over it. I think they handle it really well there.
Yeah.
But I agree, it's a little clunky in Two Towers. But again, I mean, that's one of those few issues that is actually a holdover from the book.
Yeah. Huh.
So...
That was weird that I did not remember that was in the book.
Well, it's just a weird... It's not a kind of Tolkien thing to do.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's interesting. There's a lot of stuff involving Eowyn that you would not have thought Tolkien wrote. But, I mean, he wrote the one-liner, "I am no man." That's all... Like that. The killing of the Witch King is verbatim what Tolkien wrote. They changed nothing. I mean, he wrote that action sequence. I mean, it's a very cinematic part in the book. Mm-hmm. It's very weird. In any case, they get to Helm's Deep... A lot of sort of waiting around, building tension, and then when the battle starts, holy crap. Greatest epic battle scene of all time?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, it's so good. And the color scheme, just the blues and the blacks and how dark it is, it's just, and so many great moments, and there's just this sense of scope, and as it goes along, and again, it feels like an actual battle, where there are strategic elements to it, there are portions of it, like they'll be winning at some point, they'll be retreating at others, sort of this back and forth. And then Gandalf arrives on the 5th day, and it's awesome.
They look to the west with all the riders of Rohan.
Yep.
Yeah.
Gandalf is not in this movie much.
Not really, no.
Which is fine. I mean, he's on this part of the book much, but it's interesting. But no, it's a very satisfying part of the movie.
Yeah.
And of course, in the extended cuts, you have at the end, Gandalf comes in, they kill all the orcs, and then they drive the rest of them into Fanghorn Forest, and the Ents have just arrived, and they just beat the shit out of the orcs.
Yeah. It's just like where it's like a shot and like the trees just sort of like start shaking, you hear some like screams, it's like, oh Jesus.
Yeah, they're dying horrible deaths.
That's pretty brutal. Although, speaking of Gandalf, one thing that I always thought was kind of weird in the Two Towers, because, there's the part where they're going into Fangorn Forest, and then, like, they hear, like, they're, like, coming upon they think it's Saruman, because it's, Saruman is the White Wizard, and, the books really sort of push that, and it works a lot better in the books, where it's like, you think it's Saruman. It's like, in the movie, they kind of try to do that, too, and it's like, that's not Saruman.
They do it for a couple minutes.
Yeah, but it's like, I know, but yeah, they do it like for a little bit, but it's like, it always comes across as like this weird moment in the movie to me, because it's like, they don't try to sell it almost at all to me, I feel. It's like, no, that's not Saruman. There's no.
Well, because the difference is that we're omniscient in the movies, and we know where Saruman is.
Yeah, no, so it's like, it just kind of comes across as weird that they try to sell that in the movie to me.
Yeah. But it's well done, and when Ian McKellen returns, even if you know he's coming back, you want to applaud. And I just want to say right now, best horse in The Lord of the Rings is Shadowfax. Shadowfax is really cool. He's an awesome-looking horse.
What about Viggo Mortensen's horse? Like Breogan, I think his name is?
Breo.
Breo, that's
it. But Breo's great.
Yeah.
But Shadowfax, man.
I don't know. Breo's pretty awesome.
The scene where Aragorn sort of breaks Breo is really good. And just sort of the way he talks to horses. I feel like that wasn't scripted. I think Viggo Mortensen...
I think Viggo Mortensen can talk to horses.
I'm sure he can.
I mean, because that's one of the things, that particularly in the Two Towers Extended Edition set, is that, like, Viggo Mortensen's a very accomplished horse rider in real life. Like, he was in Hidalgo, So it's like that side of him really comes across in that part of the movie. I feel that's why I really like Braille because Viggo Mortensen really likes Braille.
Yep, it's really cool. So battle's great, a lot of good stuff at the end. Here's an interesting thing to ponder: is that originally they were going to go all the way in the Two Towers movie too. They go back to Isengard. They have the final conversation with Saruman. That was all shot for Two Towers. That would have been a really weird pacing move.
I agree. Yeah,
I can't because maybe the movie was cut differently originally, but it's just weird to me to think that you could go from the big Helm's Deep climax where you've got Sean Astin narrating over it about the things that really matter, and then have another 6 scenes.
Yeah, no, that. Good thing they didn't do that, because I agree that would have been a weird way to pace the end of the movie.
Yeah, I guess they reshot it all and sort of reoriented it to be an opening to Return of the King, where I think it works really well.
Yeah.
But
then they cut it for the theatrical edition.
Which is so weird. It's the most awkward edit, too, because they get there, and Treebeard's just like, he's not a problem anymore. And they're all like, okay!
Yeah, it's like I guess we don't have to worry about Saruman anymore.
And it makes the scene feel kind of pointless, too, because all they do is they go there, they grab Merry and Pippin, they get the Palantir, and they go, and it's really brief.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of weird. In any case, that's the Two Towers. Anything else to say about it?
It's good. I think probably, out of the 3 movies, if you're watching it sort of like a standalone movie, Two Towers is probably the weakest to me. Okay. I think, I do really like Helm's Deep, but I think it kind of has a problem being the middle part of the...
Right, it's just sort of a natural thing. And I guess, gun to my head, I would say the same thing, but... Then again, I really love it, and I couldn't choose which one is weakest.
I guess, but
I can probably say which one is my favorite. I can't say which one is my least. Oh well. In any case, the next one is Return of the King, and man, if this series was not epic already, Return of the King is it feels like its own sort of 12-hour mission unto itself. It's a big movie.
Yeah, no, definitely.
I mean, theatrical version, it's 3.5 hours long. Extended, it's over 4 hours sans credits. When you add credits in, it's 4 hours, 45 minutes or whatever.
Really long fucking credits.
Yeah. So, man, Return of the King. Damn good movie, damn big movie. And it sort of restores the focus of the narrative to Frodo and Sam, even though all the stuff in Gondor and Minas Tirith is still very, very important. But Return of the King is just a really, really wholly satisfying conclusion. I think that's what you have to say about it.
It's 5 of them.
Yeah.
I really, really love Return of the King.
It's great.
Yeah.
What should we say about Return of the King?
I think we should start at the beginning.
Okay.
The beginning of the end.
Yes, so do you want to talk about the scene with Saruman for a little bit, how they did it? Because basically what they do is they move up some of the material from Scouring of the Shire, the way he dies, and how Wormtongue kills him, and they kind of put it here. But they also mix it with the scene from the book where Saruman shouts some things at Gandalf.
Yeah.
And in this movie, they make it sort of into a foreboding sort of warning thing, what you're going to encounter in this movie.
Yeah.
I think it's a good opening to the film, because it kind of ties off film 2, kicks you into film 3, and sort of shows the connections between them.
I agree. And then, I just love that Saruman just, he gets stabbed in the back, and he falls off the Tower of Orthanc, and then he lands on this, spiky windmill thing. Don't know why that's there. And then he's, slowly, falls into the water as it spins.
The waste of Isengard is washing away.
Yeah. It's just it's this incredibly brutal fucking disgraceful death for Saruman.
If he is still conscious in that moment, that is the most painful thing. His vertebrae is just shredded, I assume. All his internal organs.
I've just been impaled twice, and oh god, this water's so gross! Oh no! No! Oh god! Oh Jesus! This is fucking disgusting. There's got to be a lot of dead bodies in that water too.
Yeah,
it'd be not good.
All right, so let's sort of go story by story again. Return of the King makes a lot of changes, but they're pretty intricate changes. I mean, again, it continues the chronological cutting. I guess the sort of big tactical change in the movie is that this all goes down in the book similar in that, it's Merry or Pippin that goes to... It's Pippin who goes to Minas Tirith with Gandalf.
Stays with Rohan.
That's all very similar. Sort of how the Siege of Minas Tirith goes, it's all very similar.
All the stuff with the Palantir.
Right. Yeah. That's all very similar. And then Aragorn and Gimli and Legolas breaking off to go find the ghosts it's the similar thrust, but what their actual goal in the book is they're going to get the Dunedain. And they're going to get the Dunedain to come be their reinforcements. And what the ghost people do is they help them get past the ships. And I forget what they're called.
It's the Corsairs.
Yeah, the Corsairs of Umbar. And that's where the ghosts help them in the book, and then the ghosts are gone. They just sort of simplify that so that the ghosts can kind of be a Deus Ex Machina in the Battle of Minas Tirith, which I think works.
Works okay. I kind of wish it wasn't like that, because feels a bit anticlimactic that it's like, oh, could they get there? And then, the one thing I don't understand about that part, how the battle ends, is... why did the ghosts wait until Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas get off the boat? Like, presumably they're ghosts! Why did they don't need to be on the fucking boat? It's just like, I guess they have the really cool shot, but it's like, intellectually, it's like, you guys could have just, like, you're ghosts, you could have just gone there, just fucking fly through the ground and get over to fucking Minas Tirith, you get into the battle, like, 5 minutes after Aragorn did the whole contract thing with you guys. So it's like, doesn't make any sense.
Maybe they just wanted to keep an eye on Aragorn, make sure he didn't break his vow.
I guess, I don't know. It's just like, I always thought that was like, kind of, come on, guys. I can just picture Aragorn sitting in the boat. It's like, guys, just go. We need to be on the boat. You're fucking ghosts. Just go. God damn it. It's like, how many thousand people died because the ghosts just didn't get over there already?
All right, good point. But that's the big change in that side of the story. Other than that, it's pretty similar. That after that, they have the last debate, where Aragorn decides they're going to buy some time for Frodo by sieging the Black Gate of Mordor. Mm-hmm. They siege the Black Gate of Mordor. You have the voice of Sauron. He comes out.
Mouth of Sauron.
Have a little conversation. Aragorn fucking kills him, and then the battle starts. On the other side, Frodo and Sam, they meet Shelob. Although there is a big change with Frodo and Sam, in that Frodo sends Sam away.
Yeah.
And so it makes it a little more dramatic when Frodo goes into Shelob's lair alone, and then Sam comes and saves him.
Yeah.
That's a change it's a tough one, but I think I like it because of how it ends up. I think I like how dramatically it...
I think so too, just because it... Especially when you watch some movies in quick succession, because this is one change I was looking for the last time I did it, because this is another one of those that I can really understand why a lot of people don't like this change. But I feel like it would have made that section of the movie really dull.
Yeah.
Because nothing would be happening with Frodo and Sam, like, character-wise. They'd just be...
Right.
Still just keep on going. They'd be in the exact same place they've been since basically they left Rivendell. And so I think it sort of makes Frodo's fall as a character, like, it sort of foreshadows that a little bit better than it kind of feels like it kind of comes out of nowhere a little bit in the book. Not in, like, a really big way or anything, but it sort of, like, helps develop that side of the story a little bit. It gives Schmeagol some fun stuff to do.
Oh, yeah.
So
Andy Serkis just having a great amount of fun in this movie.
Yeah, and I think they do it in a believable way, and I think it works.
I think it works very well, especially because I think the effect of Frodo going into Shelob's lair completely alone works beautifully.
Yeah, I agree.
It's very intense. I mean, that's part of the movie is scary. I mean, it's frightening to watch. Yeah. And then Sam, re-entering with Sting and the Evan Star. Yeah. Oh, it's awesome.
So. Yeah, no, that is one of the more controversial changes, but I think it sort of has the same effect that the Aragorn change does. That it's like, it gives a more powerful character arc and, like, some dynamism to the movie that the movie really needs because the book doesn't have it.
Yeah. It'll work really well. And then, again, it's their story's pretty much just the story from the book. After Shelob, Sam goes and saves Frodo from the Tower of Cirith Ungol. Mm-hmm. They move on through the Lands of Shadow. They get to Mount Doom. Gollum comes in. Frodo decides he's going to just take the ring. They're totally fucked. Gollum bites his finger off. Gollum gets thrown in. And then they run away.
Gollum fucking melts.
Yeah. And then the only big change, obviously, at the end is that they remove the Scouring of the Shire.
Yeah.
And do people get up in arms about this one?
Not really.
This one's just so obvious that people get it.
Everyone's just like, you don't. Well, no, because there was. Now I'm remembering there was one guy who I saw wrote like this huge post about how important the Scouring of the Shire was and like how it needed to be there. It was just like I sort of glanced through that and I was like, yeah, no, it doesn't have Glorfindel in it. I don't care.
It is important, but it's important.
But it's important
to the book.
Yeah, it's important to the book, and it's not so important that it needs to be there. And the way it changes the pacing, like I think it's really funky in the book. It would be really weird in the movie. I don't know how you could possibly put this.
I think it would ruin the entire trilogy. I would go that far because you have this. The way the movies are paced is so perfect, where it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger through 3 movies, 12 hours of material until Mount Doom goes boom.
Yeah,
and then like, what are you going to do? Do that, and they go back. It's like, all right, adventure number 2.
Yeah, it's like now we're going to have this weird other like hour tacked onto the end of the movie, where it's like, okay, we get back to the Shire, and oh fuck, Saruman's here. We have to do all this shit now. deal with that. And then the movie ends again. It's like that would. We talked about this on the last one. It's like that would not work in a movie. It's a weird way to pace something in a book. Definitely in a movie, it would not work.
Yeah,
because the pacing is so much more important in a movie than it is in a book. I feel.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, pacing in a movie is arguably more important than any other narrative medium, I think.
Yeah, I'd probably agree with that.
Yeah. So in any case, I think Return of the King is too big to do a point-by-point blow-through of.
Yeah.
Because a lot happens in this movie. So let's just take it like this. What's one of your favorite parts that you'd like to discuss in Return of the King? Or like,
why the fuck are the ghosts on the boat? Doesn't make any goddamn sense.
We already talked about this, Sean.
Well, it deserves talking about again.
Okay.
Okay, I guess another really kind of big point. This is where they do the thing where Elrond comes to the camp and gives him Anduril instead of, Aragorn taking care of that when he's at Rivendell for the first time, like happens in the book.
I like how it happens in the movie. It's a great scene where...
Yeah, I agree. And it's good because it happens really early on in the movie, and it's sort of like helps you sort of like get into it again.
And man, is that sword cool, because when he pulls it out for the first time, the frame isn't large enough to show the sword.
That sword's so fucking huge. I love it. It's like, I have to imagine that would be so unwieldy. Like, I can't imagine how heavy that sword had to be in real life.
Well, did you know Viggo Mortensen, before he shot Lord of the Rings, had no sword experience whatsoever?
Yeah, but
it's so weird.
But he
became a master.
Yeah, he became basically a master swordsman. He got really dedicated to that from the bonus stuff I saw.
Yeah. He carried the sword around with him everywhere he went. Which must have been... Well, I just can imagine like him going into a Wendy's with like a giant sword. And he probably wouldn't change. He'd be an Aragorn outfit.
He does a thing where it's like he's like dripping wet and it's like raining outside. Then he like opens the door really dramatically, like pushes it open, like sort of like sidles on it in there with the sword.
It's like, hamburger.
Yes.
No fries. All right.
I'm Aragorn, son of Arathorn, and I want a biggie.
We were just talking about this, so I think it would be worth saying, how do you feel they handle all the Shelob material in this movie? Because it's a really kind of tough idea to do well. But I think they really... this is where Peter Jackson's horror experience comes to the forefront.
Yeah, I remember specifically there's the scene where it's when Frodo gets stabbed by Shelob's stinger, and it's like this jump scare. Mm-hmm. So it's like, you don't... Because since it's a Lord of the Rings movie, you don't see that jump scare coming. That's a damn good jump scare.
It's really well done. Well, because the great thing they do is they really fuck with you, where you kind of see where Shelob is, and so when Frodo hears something, he turns around, you think he's going to see Shelob. He doesn't, and you think logically, okay, well, he's going to turn around and see Shelob, right? Mm-hmm. No. And then he takes a step. Boom!
Yeah, and then he gets stabbed from, like, just up above the frame. It's a really well done little scary moment that you don't expect to happen because nothing else in the Lord of the Rings movies is like that.
No, and I'm also thinking of him in the caves trying to cut through the web as he's trying to get out just desperately, and Gollum is just in the back making fun of him and just like throwing out insults. Oh my god, it's really intense. And Andy Serkis is just having a ball with the voice.
Yeah. Although the one thing I do have to say about Shelob's Lair is that is by far the worst fucking level in the game, in the Return of the King game, because you're playing as Sam, and fighting the spiders fucking sucks. Fighting spiders is not fun compared to fighting orcs. And they also do this little fucking thing where they'll like block your path by having all these little spiders like on the ground. And so if you try to walk past them, you get hurt. So you have to pick up a torch, throw it in the middle of the spiders, and the aiming on that is fucking terrible. And you have to like move past it. There'll be like more spiders. You have to do that again. The torches start going out. It's fucking bullshit. And then the worst part of that is that like every fucking minute they play the soundbite from the movie where Frodo's like, where he like turns on the fucking even star. They play that all the fucking time in the game. It's like, what does it go out like every 2 seconds, Frodo? Like, just leave the goddamn thing on.
I can believe that happens because you know the words by heart.
Yeah, no.
Alright, so in any case, I really like this part. All the Frodo and Sam stuff is good. I actually also want to highlight, I think they do a great job sort of doing a visual depiction of the Land of Shadow chapter, because in the book, again, that's just 30 pages of Tolkien describing what shit Frodo and Sam are in on their way to Mount Doom. And in the movie, they make it really clear that they're dying.
Yeah, like, they look like they're about to fucking drop dead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then there's the whole part where they join up with the orcs, and they're, like, in disguise.
Yeah,
and,
with, like, the ridiculous orc helmets.
And the ring starts trying to take over Frodo again, and it's intense. And so let's back up before we talk about sort of all the climaxes of the movie. But all the stuff in Minas Tirith. Minas Tirith is another interesting sort of culture that they show, because Gondor is pretty different from Rohan. It's more of a sort of, I guess I would say, defeated culture, where Rohan always has kind of this fighting spirit. Gondor has been fucked for so long.
Yeah, because they're right on the edge of Mordor.
Yeah.
So they're constantly fight, and that's one of the things that, like, once you get to that point, and then when you rewatch Fellowship, you understand what Boromir's talking about, where he says it's like, you're dealing with this shit every goddamn day. We need to use this ring because we are getting fucked out there.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's intense. And Denethor is sort of our figure here. And Denethor is a bastard, but he's a bastard who you understand.
Yeah.
And his material, I think, is pretty compelling. I mean, this is another thing that I think a lot of people who aren't overly familiar with the books think they invented for the movie. The whole Pyre of Denethor thing, that's exactly how it goes down in the book.
Yeah.
It's that sort of soap opera-esque. But it works really well in the movie, and there's a lot of good material with Faramir in there.
Yeah.
But I think why I love this whole section, and sort of going into the whole siege, which is really well done, the scale of the Siege of Gondor is, I have no idea how they did that.
Yeah.
No earthly idea how they even edit. Like, the editor must have gotten the footage for that and just, like, looked at it and cried. And, like, cried for a week and then come in and started cutting.
Yeah. No, it's like, he's just like, I'm going to do this, and then I'm just going to walk, and I will never stop walking, because I will have done the impossible after I ended this battle scene.
In any case. But what I love about this whole section is really Gandalf and how well Ian McKellen drives this part of the movie.
Well, I like Gandalf and Pippin.
That's what I was going to say, yeah.
I like both of them together.
Yep. That's great.
This is what I really love Billy Boyd in this movie.
He's great.
Yeah, this is where Pippin really shines to me.
And who would have thought Ian McKellen and Billy Boyd would be just such a good dramatic kind of powerhouse?
Yeah.
But I always think to the scene where Ian McKellen describes what dying is like to Pippin, and Ian McKellen just does a beautiful job delivering that, but Billy Boyd's reactions also are great.
Yeah. Then I think about when after Pippin becomes a steward of Gondor, and then it's like the scene where Denethor is like eating, and Pippin has to start singing. And there's something like, I've never seen someone eat in such a disgusting way.
I know!
It's like he's like biting into chicken, and it's like just like dripping down his face. It's like, Jesus Christ, dude! Like, have some tact, goddammit! You're the steward of Gondor. Like, come on, man! You're running this fucking place.
I know, it's very sort of iconic in that way, that scene. That's a great scene. Billy Boyd's voice, as he sings that, it's very haunting.
Yeah.
And it's really good. And that's funny, because that poem is a really good one, but it's from a part where they're just walking in Book 1 of Fellowship, and it's supposed to be a happy walking song, and they turn it into this sad sort of...
That is not a happy goddamn walking song.
No. So, in any case...
That would have been great, though, if, like, in Fellowship of the Ring, and they're like, Pippin, like, sing a song. He starts singing that song, it's like, dude, like, we're just walking, what the... You don't have to be such a goddamn downer. Like, holy shit.
I was going to say, Pippin, sing us a song, and Pippin just stops dead in his tracks. Home is behind. And they're like, Pippin, what's wrong? And Pippin just like crying as he sings. No. Yes, Billy Boyd's really good. I actually think this is something that I want to highlight about Return of the King, is how well every character in this cast of thousands gets resolution and arc.
Yeah.
I mean, all the way down to, Merry and Pippin both have big arcs of sort of coming into their own as heroes. Mm-hmm. Denethor, Faramir, everyone, Eowyn, Eomer, Faramir. Oh, I said Faramir.
Yeah.
But lots and lots of people. Yeah, Theoden.
The
ghosts.
Who are on the boats.
Yes. Anyway, so
lots. Kill that Legolas kills gets a nice character arc.
Oh yeah, lots and lots of good characters. So again, Battle of Minas Tirith is really cool. What's the ghost? What I've always sort of why I've tolerated the thing of the ghosts just being a Deus Ex Machina is because when they come in, the battle is not immediately over. There's still some stuff that happens, and I think part of that is Legolas's badass, bordering on cheesy, but on the right side of that line, taking down of the elephant. Yeah,
there's like, I love how there's just like, Legolas gets like that star moment in like the final fighting scenes of each of the movies, and it like slowly ramps up. Whereas like Fellowship, it's just like totally nonchalant, sort of laid back, where he does a thing where like he pulls an arrow out of his quiver, he like stabs an Uruk-hai, pulls it back immediately, and shoots it at another Uruk-hai. It's like, that's a cool little moment. Then in Two Towers, it gets up a little bit more, where he has a shield, like throws it down the stairs, is like surfs it down the stairs like a fucking Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, and just pops some dudes with his bow. Kind of cheesy, works pretty well. But yeah, it's like his defining moment of that action scene. And then Return of the King, he fucking just kills a goddamn Mumakil, like this giant elephant with with a huge like battle harness that's like a tower, one of the two towers that's got like a bunch of dudes on it, and he's like fucking kills all of them. It's like, Well, Jesus Christ, like, why haven't you been doing that shit the whole goddamn time?
It still only counts as one.
Yeah. It's like, holy shit. It's like, do you want to just go into Mordor and take care of that Sauron asshole? Because you might be able to.
I know. Legolas is basically a superhero by the end of these movies.
Yeah.
In any case, lots and lots of good stuff. So, what other part of the movie do we want to talk about before we get on to the 8 or 9 different climaxes?
Trying to think, because there's a lot of shit in this movie.
Anything sort of earlier on? I know what I want to talk about. I think they do a great job with, we already hinted at it, but the final material with Theoden and Éowyn, where Theoden gets killed in battle, and all his speeches, too, as they're riding out, is really good. And then Éowyn, so sort of trying to save her uncle. She's too late, but she does kill the Witch King. Mm-hmm. It's just a great character fulfillment. And it speaks well to how well Miranda Otto plays that part, that we're that invested in her, even though she's been pretty minor up to this point.
Yeah, I agree.
So, works really well.
The Witch King of Angmar looks fucking awesome.
Oh, he does, yeah. And I love the shot earlier in the movie where he stops Gandalf and breaks Gandalf's staff.
Yeah.
And you see Gandalf is like powerless against this guy, but then Éowyn kills him.
Well, yeah, because Gandalf has a dick, so too bad he can't fight the Witch King of Angmar.
Very true.
It's like a really specific fucking weakness the Witch King has. That maybe the Witch King was just never aware of. It's like, this is so weird. It's just like, no, anyone who has a dick can't kill me. That's my superpower.
At least they don't phrase it that way in the story.
But that's what it amounts to.
I have no dick. Whatever that line would be.
I have no dick.
All right.
That should have been the line. That would be great. And you're a fucking robot.
We work Prometheus jokes into everything.
Yeah.
It's great. All right. Back to the movie. So, the destruction of the ring at Mount Doom. How well do you think they pull this off? Because I think it's a pretty fucking awesome set of scenes.
Yeah, I do too, because I think they, again, it's like Frodo and Sam are about to fucking drop dead. Like, I love that section of the movie where they're just, like, crawling.
I can't carry it for you, but I can carry you! And everyone in the theater applauds.
Yeah. Just because, whoever was doing the makeup in that scene is like, that guy must have seen some shit to be able to make a person look like that, because it's like, god damn, they look like they're about to drop dead. And all the build-up to that moment, and then it's like, and it's always kind of, it's such a strange conclusion that The Lord of the Rings has, where Gollum, gets the ring, and he finally has it, and he sort of, dances around, and then falls in. It's just sort of a really strange way to end it.
They fix it in the movie.
Yeah, they don't make it as sort of weird as, you would imagine it when you're reading the book.
Yeah.
But it still is kind of just a weird conclusion that works really well, and you have no idea why that works
well,
so well.
I think part of it is that all the build-up is to, and you're right, they build it up really well to Frodo just dropping the ring in. And you expect that to happen, and you expect it to happen, and then when he gets there, he turns around, and the music, hey, oh, hey, and he puts the ring on, and Sam's like, no, Sam wants to die.
For fuck's sake, man! God damn it! This shit we've been through, and now you're doing this? Couldn't you have done this after we left the goddamn Shire? Because I would have just walked home. You made me go all the way here, and now you pussy out? Fucking A, man. Fucking A.
And I think what's so great is that's pretty much how the audience feels, too.
Yeah.
So you can pretty much get away with anything at that point. Once you've done that dramatic inversion, all the stuff with Gollum works.
Yeah.
And then, just the visuals here are great. And intercutting with the battle at the Black Gate, which I should mention also has Aragorn's awesome speech.
Yeah.
Which is one of my favorite movie speeches ever. So, and then, Mount Doom goes boom, everyone's sad, the Eagles take them away. And then all the concluding material is really good. And I think we mentioned this last week. I've always resented, in terms of Lord of the Rings complaints. I don't understand it, and I resent the complaint that Return of the King has 5 endings. It does not have 5 endings. It has 1 ending, and it's just got multiple components to it because it is a 12-hour multifaceted story with a large ensemble cast. And I think they do it really expertly. In fact, you can tell how well they put this ending together, that this is the longest stretch of film in the extended cuts that is not changed. Mm-hmm. Once the ring is destroyed, that's just it. It's the same in the theatrical and extended, because they got it right the first time.
Yeah, no, I agree. It is one of those things, I think we said this on the last podcast, where it makes sense why you would feel that way if you just watch Return of the King, sort of in a vacuum, or really far away from the other movies. But when you watch the movies in quick succession, they need to end that way, because it's basically one long-ass fucking movie that it needs to have this long, drawn-out conclusion. It needs to have a long denouement because it's had a long rising action and climax.
Yeah. No, it needs that, and I don't get the attitude that it should have been like, Mount Doom explodes, freeze cut, smash to black.
It's like Frodo went on to be really traumatized by the events and went to the Grey Havens. It's like, just go through all the lists. Basically, everyone just ends up in the Grey Havens.
It'd be like the end of the Breakfast Club.
Yeah, exactly.
They'd play Don't You Forget About Me.
The last shot is like they're in Rivendell, and like Frodo wakes up, and then he's like, he walks outside, and he like throws his fist up into the air, and then like freeze frames and plays Don't Forget About Me. That would have been that's it. And he's got fingerless gloves on too, because it's the 80s now. All of a sudden, in Lord of the Rings world.
It depresses me that they didn't do that.
Yeah, no, that should have been how it ended.
They should have really shot a version of that with Elijah Wood just to have it.
That would have been great.
All right. So anyway, a lot of good stuff here in the end of Return of the King. So they get back to Rivendell. There's that great scene where Frodo sees everyone again. They're all laughing and happy. And
yeah, it just like makes you realize, it's like, fuck, dude, Frodo hasn't seen like anyone other than Sam and Schmeagol and Faramir for a long ass time.
Yeah,
it's a long time coming seeing some other people for him.
But I also like the realization that he would have no concept that Gandalf was still alive.
Yeah, no, that's true.
They kind of gloss over it, but they have to. I mean, it would be weird if they stopped and had a scene where he's like, "What? No one told me."
What the fuck, man? You could have called.
Yeah, send an eagle.
Yeah, just like you did that thing with the moth. You can do that with me too.
Yeah, Gandalf is alive. Oh, awesome. So a lot of good stuff there, and then the scene at Minas Tirith, which is the coronation of Aragorn, which is sort of this is an interesting scene. I think this is the moment where a lot of people who complain about the endings, this is where they think it should have ended. It's just on Minas Tirith, because I think a lot of people do have this perception that Aragorn was the hero, because he is sort of the traditional heroic figure.
Yeah.
And this is his traditional big ending. But I would say Peter Jackson is very clever in how he focuses this scene, is in that Aragorn gets his moment to be king and kiss Arwen again and all that. But then how does the scene end? It's about the hobbits.
Yeah.
You bow to no one. That is such a great scene.
Yeah.
I remember that's the scene they showed at the Oscars when it won Best Picture, and it's such a powerful moment of everyone bowing down to them.
That one hits you pretty goddamn hard when you've watched those movies like back to back.
Yeah.
It's like,
they've earned it.
No, you bow to fucking no one.
Yeah.
Except for Frodo, you kind of chickened out at the end. It's like you can like half bow, but
bow to Sam. Just turn and bow to Sam.
Yeah.
He deserves. Give him $50 or something.
Yeah.
All right, and then you go back to the Shire, and sort of just you have the final material building up to him going to the Grey Havens. You get to see Ian Holm as Bilbo again in old person makeup.
Yep.
And the Grey Haven scene is really good, and there's a lot of fun production stories from that, where they actually shot that like 6 months from the end of the shoot, so it was by no means the last scene that they performed, but they knew this was the goodbye scene, and so they had to get in this really sad, emotional state, and it was really rough, and they all hated Sean Astin for it because he forgot to put his like coat on, and so they had to reshoot the entire scene a second day after the first day, and it was just, there were all these different issues. Yeah. It's really funny. So if you can find that part on the bonus features of Return of the King, it's fun to watch. But Grey Haven scene is great, and I am very glad, and have always been very glad, that they they went 30 seconds beyond that and did the ending with "I'm back."
Yeah, they finished it with Sam coming back to his house where he's got like Rosie and his kid.
Yeah,
it's like
that's what Lord of the Rings is about.
Yeah, and like again, like you said, a lot of people feel that Aragorn was the hero. It's like no,
he's a hero.
He is a hero, but the main. So, the true protagonist, I feel, of the story is Sam. I think most people sort of come to that conclusion if they're really into Lord of the Rings. And so it's like, of course, you have to end it there. Like, you can't just, like, I think there are two places you could have ended the movie. It's like, one, they get on the Eagles and you just end it there. Leave it ambiguous to what ultimately happens. That would have been okay. But it's like, if you didn't want to have a bunch of endings. Or you end it with Sam. It's like, those are the two. You couldn't have done either. Like, couldn't have ended it at Rivendell. You couldn't have ended it with the coronation of the king. It's like, no.
Right.
Yeah.
Can I tell you something that when I saw the movie for the first time, there's that shot when Frodo and Sam are out on that rock and they're just lying there, and it fades to black for a moment, and then it comes back in and it's playing the Elvish music, and the Eagles come pick them up. Mm-hmm. Well, when I saw this for the first time, I was really scared they were going to end it at that fade to black on the rock. Like, I was like, wait, what? And I'm like, there's so much left. What are they doing? And then they come back in. I'm like, oh, thank God. But I still get that feeling sometimes because I just remember how I felt the first time I saw it. It's kind of a long fade to black.
It is, yeah. No, it definitely is. But although that reminds me, and this isn't just the movies, this extends to the book. My biggest pet peeve is people who think they're really fucking smart and say this like, dude, why didn't they just ride the eagles to Mordor? You fucking... Yeah, that would have really worked. Let's just get on a fucking eagle and fly all the way to Mordor, where there's this big goddamn power with a huge-ass flaming eye and the most powerful sorcerer in all of history fucking there. He is not going to notice the object of his desire riding on a fucking giant eagle through the sky towards him. He's got thousands and thousands and thousands of orcish archers. He's got 9 ring wraiths with big-ass dragon things. You'd be fucking dead in a second if you tried to do that. The whole goddamn point is to have this small team of it's basically a special operations team. It's like we got like these 9 fucking dudes who are we
got explosives.
Yeah, we've got 5 dudes who are really good at what they're doing. 4 really short people, and I don't know why most of them are there. We got the one dude who's carrying the ring. He's kind of important. But it's like we got these 9 dudes taking care of this, so that they can go in covertly and take care of this without Sauron figuring it out, because the most powerful thing Sauron has is his information gathering abilities, because he's a huge fucking eye. So it's like, that's what we're going to do, because he can find out where the ring is very, very easily. Always hate when people bring that up all the goddamn time.
And they're so smug about it. Like they think
they figured out this like big secret. Like it's like, why didn't they just get on the eagles at the beginning, just fly over to Mordor? It's like, you have no fucking clue what you're talking about. You're right, they're always smug assholes about it. You think they're really fucking smart. It's like, you don't know what a plot hole is, asshole. Sit the fuck down.
Yeah.
It's like...
Well, and also, if you read actually about the history, the eagles... You can't just call the eagles.
Yeah, the eagles wouldn't have just been like, yeah, sure, fuck it. We'll fly into the heart of, like, death when the most powerful place in the entire world just right off the bat for you.
Alright, so I think that's all the movies.
Yeah.
Alright, so we should probably, at this point, talk about one of the most important parts, which is really just go character by character and talk about how we view these performances and these interpretations, especially because some of them do differ from the books.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to look at that. So let's start, obviously, with our main character, Frodo Baggins, Elijah Wood. Elijah Wood's really good in these movies.
I agree.
I can't stress that enough. He does not get enough credit, but he is really good in these movies, and
and he gets a really hard role to play because Frodo's entire conflict is completely internal.
Yeah.
Because it's just him trying his hardest not to put the ring on.
Yeah.
And
he makes it dynamic.
Yeah.
He makes it interesting. He takes a very literary concept and makes it cinematic, and he's very compelling. He's got a good charisma. I think he's got a movie star presence you need for this kind of thing, but in a different sort of way.
Yeah, I agree.
Obviously, Viggo Mortensen is the movie star in these movies, but Frodo still has this quality, Elijah Wood, that I've always been a little sad that Elijah Wood was sort of pigeonholed after The Lord of the Rings. I mean, it was kind of bound to happen, but he's obviously done a lot of good work in various things. But when I see him in things, Elijah Wood is such a good actor. I watched this movie. This indie film from Sundance. It was called Celeste and Jesse Forever. It's with Rashida Jones and Adam Sandberg. Andy Samberg. I don't know that guy's name.
Andy Samberg, I'm pretty sure.
Okay. It's a really good sort of... It's not a romantic comedy. It's a romantic drama. It's very serious. It's got some humor, but it's a pretty serious movie. But it's very good. And Elijah Wood just has this small part as Rashida Jones's boss. And he's in the movie for probably all of 10 minutes combined. But he's so good. And I want more Elijah Wood. I mean, someday I'm going to sit down and watch that.
You want some more wood, Jonathan?
Yeah.
Jonathan just needs more wood.
Thank you, Sean. But no, I'm going to watch that show Wilfred on FX someday because he's a good actor and I like watching him work. And, I sort of wish he sort of had more opportunities in big movies like this to do sort of starring roles and maybe more dramatic material. Because I think that's the interesting part here is that he does stuff that would serve him well in a very dramatic capacity in other movies because it's that kind of acting. So...
I agree.
Would you say this Frodo is any different from the book in any major ways? This is pretty much how...
Yeah, it's pretty close. I mean, anything else would just be sort of your own interpretation of what happens. Like, there's nothing really big that changes other than the...
The age is actually the only...
Oh, yeah, there's that.
But
then also, how you translate Hobbit age into human age is sort of, ambiguous.
Right.
It's not... I mean, the biggest change to me is the scene that we already talked about where he, fuck off, Sam, basically. Yeah. That's talk about that.
They emphasize the darker elements of him a little bit more, and obviously, I think you could say that Frodo gets more chances to be outright heroic in the book, but translating it to a cinematic form, if you did that outright and had Frodo pull out a sword and start killing people, Yeah, I don't know if it would feel right.
I agree. I don't.
It wouldn't hammer home the point they need to make that's in the book about the ring.
Yeah.
So I think they do it very well.
I think Aragorn's kind of got the stabbing dudes thing down.
Oh, yeah.
Got that filled up for a movie.
So, continuing with Hobbits, Sean Astin is Sam. Another actor who... Sean Astin is phenomenal in these films. He's the heart and soul. He's so great. He embodies Sam in every way, shape, or form. I can't think of a single way he's different from Sam in the books. That just is Sam. It's like sort of like how Ian McKellen is Gandalf. That's just like Sean Astin was like born from the pages of Lord of the Rings to be Samwise Gamgee.
Yeah, except for the fact that he doesn't actually have really fierce feet and he's not actually really small.
Right.
But if only then he literally would be Samwise Gamgee.
Yeah, pretty much. He's damn good.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's not much to say about him.
Yeah, he's just really fucking good as Sam.
Especially in Return of the King, in the last act.
Where he has a lot more to sort of do, because that's when he really does just straight up become the main character, because Frodo's been captured.
Yeah. And I think we also need to talk about how these two characters work in unison, is that as good as Sean Astin and Elijah Wood are on their own, their performances are largely defined by each other, and I think their chemistry is phenomenal, and the work they do just playing off one another. I always think of the scene where they're on Mount Doom. It's right before he gives the, I can't carry you, or I can't carry it, but I can carry you line. They go back and forth talking about strawberries and the Shire and the smell of grass. And so well done. And again, I mean, they very much commit to the sort of darkness of the parts at that point. Yeah. So really good stuff. And I think as long as... We should probably go in sort of thematic chunks here, because the other actor those two work with primarily is Andy Serkis as Gollum. Mm-hmm. And this is probably the time to talk about Gollum.
Schmiegel.
And again, this is another thing that you probably forget today, because this is such a common technique, the one that was used to bring Gollum to life. There had never been anything remotely like Gollum in film before now.
There had been the monstrosity that is Jar Jar Binks.
But he wasn't motion captured. He wasn't defined by...
I think he was like a fully CGI character who's like talking and interacting with people, and it's terrifying. Right. Yeah, but Jar Jar Binks in very different ways than Gollum can be terrifying. Yeah, but I mean, just from a technical level, I still have no idea how they did Gollum that well. Yeah, especially because it's one of those things that makes it feel like the movies are not old. Is that it doesn't feel like Gollum, like the tech behind Gollum, has aged, which is weird, because you would I always would expect when I would go back and watch Lord of the Rings, it's like Gollum's going to look pretty rough. Nope. Still looks like maybe still the best CGI character I've seen. Like, he just, occupies that space in a way I can't think any other CGI character does, other than in, just full CGI movies like Toy Story or something like that.
I think the only thing that rivals it is other Andy Serkis CGI characters, like King Kong or...
Yeah, no, King Kong is really good, too.
Right. Or Caesar in Rise of the Planet of the Apes, which Andy Serkis is awesome in that movie. But in any case... Gollum, it's just I mean, I have the Blu-rays, and he looks perfect on the Blu-rays now. It's like he just... The people at Weta, the work they went to making him just fit in that environment. And I think part of it is how strongly Andy Serkis worked with them, both on set and then on the mocap stage. I mean, he did every scene 8 different times for them. Yeah. And so this was all about physical performance. And I think it is still sad that those sorts of performances are not recognized in the same way as a live-action one, because Andy Serkis did just as much for these movies.
I would say more.
Yeah. And I know, Peter Jackson fought very hard back in 2003 for Andy Serkis to get an Oscar nomination for Return of the King, and they just kept saying he was disqualified because it was CGI. That's just stupid.
Yeah, I mean, it's technically CGI, but it is his performance. It's not like it's some digital animator made the Gollum performance. Andy Serkis is that character.
And you do have to give props to Weta Workshop for their design of Gollum is great. It's like, I did not imagine Gollum that way when I read the books, but once you see him that way, it's hard to imagine him any other way.
Yeah. Other than the Hobbit.
Right. Yeah. In the Hobbit, because he's described very differently. Yeah. More of a water creature. Mm-hmm. So... It's definitely interesting, and what will be interesting with the Hobbit movie is seeing how the Gollum model looks today, because
that's true.
It doesn't feel like there's room for improvement, but I assume it's going to look better.
Yeah, I don't know how.
Maybe just being in 3D and things like that is what will be the change will be. Hmm. So Gollum will leap out at the screen and flip off the audience. In 3 dimensions. No, but Andy Serkis is great. I imagine he shredded his vocal cords to shit doing this movie.
They do talk about that a lot in the bonus materials. He had
Gollum juice.
Gollum juice, that he'd have to drink that really helped his throat and stuff. I always remember he has like the one story about I think it's right before the scene with like the potatoes and all that, where he's like in a river, like crawling around,
and
like trying to get a
footage
fish of him, like he's in like the full get up with like he's in like this little like suit thing, and he's like in this river. It's like, dude, you're gonna fucking die. Like you should not be in like 7 o'clock in the morning in this like skin tight suit.
Well, and there's rocks everywhere.
Yeah, crawling around in this river with like rocks and like this ice cold water. It's like, dude, this cannot be good for you. Jesus Christ.
Well, here's what I was going to say is that I did remember what the main technological difference is now between Gollum in 2002, between Gollum and 2012, is that
10 years.
Well, is that Gollum, back then what they had to do is that they would shoot every scene in the movie that had Gollum twice. Once with Andy Serkis in there with Frodo and Sam as a guide, and he would be in the white costume.
Yeah.
And then the actual takes that are in the movie, he would be taken out, and Frodo and Sam would do what they rehearsed with him just before.
Yeah.
And then he would have to come back to the post-production stages in Wellington and do it all on a mocap stage. Well, now the motion capture technology has come so far that you can do motion capture live wherever you're shooting. And so Gollum and Martin Freeman, for instance, in The Hobbit, it's just Martin Freeman and Andy Serkis is in the mocap suit, and they just shot it on the sets for Riddles in the Dark. So it simplifies the process and probably makes it even better, because there's no barrier to the performing. I know Martin Freeman has said it made it really freeing to just know that's Gollum, and I know who Andy Serkis is, and we can just act off one another. So, but Gollum, really well done, and this is another one where their interpretation of Gollum is pretty much what Tolkien wrote.
Yeah, I feel like they do like the sort of the schizophrenic side of it. They really play that up.
They do.
Not so much in the book, but
one of the scenes.
But I think it's really well done.
It's really well done, and one of the scenes that kind of established that is in The Two Towers, where the first time you really get a sense of his schizophrenia. And what they do, it's this really simple camera trick where Gollum's talking, and then Smeagol talks, and they just shift the perspective.
Yeah.
Like he would shoot any normal dialogue scene, but he's in the same spot.
Yeah.
It's so simple, no one thought of it until that. And now people do that all the time for things like this. It's a very common shot, and you probably wouldn't know it, but Peter Jackson did not direct that scene.
No, really?
That was Fran Walsh's wife, who you never hear on the bonus features because she doesn't do interviews. But it was a second unit scene, and all their like second unit directors were out, and so they said, "Oh, Fran, go do that with Andy." And she's just like, "Oh, well, put it here." And they said it's because she was not a director, she had that idea. No director would have thought of that. It was too simple, but she was just like, "Oh, I know how to do it. Here. So it makes sense.
That woman deserves an Oscar.
Yes. Good work. So we've talked about Gollum. Let's go back to the other hobbits. We're all talking about sort of small people right now.
Well, Smeagol was a hobbit at one point in time.
So Merry and Pippin kind of always have to go together. Dominic Monaghan and Billy Boyd.
Yeah.
And they are substantially different from the books because Merry and Pippin are not really jokesters in the book.
Yeah, they're not so much the crazy troublemakers.
Yeah, but they also don't really have any character in the books, so you had to do something with them.
There really isn't that much that distinguishes Merry and Pippin from each other. They're sort of like the two hobbits. They're kind of like Glorfindel to me in the books. It's just like, it's the character.
Yeah.
They're there.
But I love them in the movie. Everyone loves them in the movie. They're great.
Yeah, they definitely just like really strengthen up their characterization and make them really compelling, and then that also gives them a place to start, so that they have a place to now end where they've evolved over the course of the movies.
Yeah, absolutely, and I like that they also don't just give them identical character traits. Merry and Pippin, Merry is much more sort of forceful. Pippin is a little more cowardly.
Yeah,
they're very good friends, obviously, and that's very true from the books, but. They're sort of like type A, type B in some ways.
Yeah, it's just like if you watch the Ralph Bakshi animated version, Merry and Pippin are completely, like, they're the same. They're like the same goddamn person. Every time I go back and watch that, I can't tell which one's which. I'm just like, that one might be Merry. I'm pretty sure that's a Pippin line, so that guy's got to be Pippin.
Yeah.
So I think he's got slightly darker hair, so that must make him Merry.
No, but anything to say, we already talked about how good Billy Boyd in his Return of the King. Dominic Monaghan really gets his moments to shine, I would say, probably in Fellowship and Two Towers.
Yeah, particularly like his stuff with Treebeard and Two Towers is really good.
It is, and he has that good speech to the Ents at the end of Two Towers.
Yeah.
And Dominic Monaghan is actually, of all the Hobbits, probably has had the most notable career since then on TV, because he was on Lost, he's been on some other shows. So, yeah. It's funny because I obviously was a big Lost fan, and I liked his character on Lost a lot. Dominic Monaghan was good on that show. I never connected that those are the same people. Charlie on Lost and Mary.
I did immediately when I started watching Lost. I was like, oh god, it's Mary. I can't. I can't watch this character because that's just Dominic Monaghan. He's just married to me, so I was like, oh god, I can't watch this character. This is going to take me out of all of his episodes.
It's just for me because he has the Australian accent in Lost. He's got a
beard,
he
does. He's really good. It's like he's really physically different, but I noticed it just immediately. I was like, fuck. I wish I hadn't noticed that because now I can't watch his episodes.
Well, and now Evangeline Lilly from Lost will be in the Hobbit film too.
Oh yeah.
So I'll come back.
Well, I don't think it doesn't work the other way for me.
Right.
Lord of the Rings takes the precedence.
Absolutely. All right. So those are all the Hobbits except for one, the most important Hobbit of them all, Bilbo Baggins.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Greatest little Hobbit of them all.
I thought it was the Proud Feet. They're the
best. Proud Foot. Other way around. Anyway,
yeah, it is the other way around.
Ian
I made
Holm.
the joke first already, implicitly saying Proud Feet.
I know. Ian Holm is Bilbo. Perfect.
Yeah, no, definitely.
and
it gives Martin Freeman something to live up to in The Hobbit.
I know, because
Ian Holm's so fucking good as
he's
old
Bilbo. So good as Bilbo. And it's this funny thing where when you hear Martin Freeman is playing Bilbo, you think that's perfect. But I like that you have Ian Holm, though, so Martin Freeman, like you said, has something to work up to.
Yeah.
Because Martin Freeman as Bilbo is such obvious casting.
Mm-hmm.
It's good obvious.
Yeah.
It's just like, who else would do it? Mm-hmm. Martin Freeman has to be young Bilbo. But because he has Ian Holm, I think he does have something to strive for rather than just being Martin Freeman.
Yeah.
And that will work really well. And Ian Holm, man, he makes the first, half hour of Fellowship of the Ring click for me. He's so good in those
especially
scenes.
him and Ian McKellen. Their relationship is so well defined, immediately.
Yeah, they sketch it really well just through their dialogue together.
Yeah, it's just I mean, that's one of those scenes that's I'm really excited to after watching The Hobbit, just watching the beginning of Fellowship and sort of seeing how that feels recontextualized with having seen their version of The Hobbit now.
Yes. I'm definitely excited. And I'm excited to see Ian Holm back just for the opening scenes in the Hobbit movie. That'll just be nice.
Yeah.
Because he's damn good. And I think had they made the Hobbit sooner, they could possibly have done it with Ian Holm if they could have done young person makeup or something. I don't think it would be the right decision, but
yeah, I don't think that would work that well. I would not advise having your main protagonist character being a character in makeup that's that heavy.
Oh, I agree. I'm just saying he is that good.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So Ian Holm, awesome. And as long as we're talking about this section of the movie, Ian McKellen as Gandalf.
Gandalf the Grey.
I've said it before, I'll say it again. Gandalf the Grey is and Gandalf the White, just Gandalf, is my favorite screen character of all time. Ian McKellen, my favorite screen performance of all time. No contest. I just love Ian McKellen as Gandalf so much. I love Gandalf in the books more than I can say, but Ian McKellen makes him even better. I mean, he is Gandalf, just for one. It's just he is Gandalf the Grey and then Gandalf the White just perfectly. But then he adds, for me, so much to the character. Sort of this sense of weariness and sort of wisdom and experience that you just sort of see it in him. That he can be very sort of jovial and have all this life to him, but at the same time, he's lived through stuff, and you kind of see that in his eyes.
It's one of those characters where it's where the character has lived for thousands of years, and you get that sense through the performance. It's Ian McKellen's fucking awesome as Gandalf.
Oh yeah, I mean that's my most excited thing about The Hobbit is that The Hobbit has a good amount of Gandalf in it, and so we're going to get a good amount of Ian McKellen, and I'm very psyched.
Yeah.
They had a clip online the other day of Gandalf giving Bilbo Sting after they raid the trolls. It's just 40 seconds, but it's him giving Bilbo a little speech about courage. I'm like, oh, I'm going to love this movie.
Yeah, but the Gandalf after the scene that inspired every RPG, it's the loot drop. There we go. It's you got your +5 sword. All right. So, but then they have to go identify it too. It's that's just that's what I love about reading The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings is just this has created every single fantasy RPG of all time, and I can see where they got the ideas for every single fantasy RPG of all time, just every single page. There's a new one. Here's the loot drop. Oh, but you don't know what the magic loot is. We have to go get this dude to identify it, to find out what it does. It's yep, there we go.
It's great. So anything else to say about Gandalf?
It's Gandalf.
His best scene is Khazad-dûm, you'd say?
Yeah, I get I wasn't thinking about what his best scene would be. His best scene is them opening the door. That's his best scene.
Oh yeah,
yeah. That's because it's just when he's becomes a really irritated old man. I like when Gandalf does that. Also, when Pippin drops the body into the well, it's
anytime he chastises someone else,
throw yourself in next time and rid us of your stupidity.
There's just a lot of great stuff of him chastising Pippin across all three films. It's wonderful.
Yeah, no.
So in any case, yes, as long as we're talking about very old characters, should we go to Hugo Weaving as Elrond?
Sure, if that's how we're segueing these. I thought we would have a more organized way of doing it, but fuck it.
No, I know where we're going from here. It's all mapped out in my head.
Okay, good.
All right.
Okay.
Elrond, Hugo Weaving. Hugo Weaving is a god. He's awesome.
Yep, that's...
Every movie would be better with Hugo Weaving in it. I cannot think of a movie that would not be better with Hugo Weaving in it.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm trying to... He did the voice of Megatron in the Transformers movies, and that was... Could have done without that, but...
But he didn't negative. I mean...
Yeah, but I mean, Frank Welker, you could just gotten Frank
That's
Welker.
my point. But let's say Hugo Weaving was actually in them. Like,
if he was playing a character, fuck yeah. Like, if he was just like, that Hugo Weaving just walks on set. He's not even a character. He's just Hugo Weaving and he just walks on set. Fuck yeah.
Right. And
any movie.
Yeah.
Every movie.
One of the reasons Cloud Atlas is my favorite film of 2012 so far is you've just got Hugo Weaving popping in every story as that story's incarnation of the devil. It's great. And in the Tom Hanks story at the end of time, he's playing like this weird goblin monster. It's awesome. So Hugo Weaving, he's the man, and it's just Elrond. I mean, there's some characters in this movie we're going to talk about who have, they've got new arcs or they're changed, but some of these they just took them from the book and found an actor who is the embodiment of that.
Yeah.
And Hugo Weaving to me is that. Where obviously maybe he's a little more hard edged than Elrond is in the book.
He feels more like to me, Elrond in Lord of the Rings is a little bit different to Elrond in The Hobbit.
Yeah.
Mostly because he's a lot more sort of involved with all the council and everything. So it's like Hugo Weaving is very much Elrond from Lord of the Rings to me. It'll be interesting to see him being Elrond in The Hobbit, in the context of The Hobbit, where it's like all this shit is not necessarily piling on right now, and he's just welcoming a bunch of dwarves and his old friend Gandalf into his home.
And I actually think he can play that just fine.
I think he'll be able to play that too. It'd just be cool to see, because it's a very different side of the character.
Absolutely. But he's got a lot of really standout scenes in the trilogy. I always think back to, in The Two Towers, it's a moment you forget even happens, but it's a really nice sort of ethereal moment where he and Galadriel have this sort of telepathic conversation, and they're just sort of, these are two people who have lived forever since the dawn of Middle-earth, and now they know Middle-earth may be coming to a close. It's like, and it's just these people who have experienced time, and they're talking about this, and just him and Cate Blanchett just having that duality is wonderful.
Yeah.
So, Elrond's an elf.
Elrond is an elf.
We already talked about Galadriel, who's another elf.
So,
we're going to talk about...
Naturally, next is Glorfindel.
Glorfindel, yes. Glorfindel, the greatest character left out of Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, I don't... How the fuck did they cut out Glorfindel?
I know.
It's Glorfindel.
It goes...
Never forgive Peter Jackson.
It goes Glorfindel, Gandalf, Optimus Prime on list of all-time great fictional characters.
Yeah.
Pretty much, right?
Glorfindel's right up there at the top.
Yeah.
And it's not even just like he barely edges out Gandalf. It's like he's miles ahead.
Yeah.
Glorfindel.
It's too bad. But, elves...
Glorfindel is an elf, so...
So Arwen's an elf. She's also Elrond's daughter, so there's a very obvious connection there.
Why did you segue that way? Why did you go to elf if you're going to go to... I thought you were going to go to, Legolas or something.
We're getting there, Sean. Quit spoiling it.
God, Jesus Christ. Arwen presumably wears socks. You know who else wears socks? Gimli!
I actually don't think we see Arwen wearing socks.
Presumably she does, at some point.
Right.
I would imagine.
We're going to pause the podcast, watch the whole trilogy, examine this, frame by frame.
Yeah, now I'm trying to come up with the most ridiculous segue. I'm trying to somehow connect the fact that Arwen is played by Liv Tyler, who's the daughter of Steve Tyler, who's the lead singer for Aerosmith. I can't think of how I can connect Aerosmith anywhere else to Lord of the Rings. It's fucking hard.
In any case, we like Liv Tyler as Arwen.
God, we already did Gollum, because I could do Aerosmith is a rock band. Led Zeppelin is also a rock band. Led Zeppelin made songs about Lord of the Rings, one of which features Gollum in the lyrics. Now let's go back and talk about Gollum again.
All right, what do you think about Gollum, Sean?
Gollum's awesome. Okay.
All right, back to Arwen. What do you think about Liv Tyler as Arwen? We already mentioned her a little bit.
She's the daughter of Steve Tyler, lead vocalist for Aerosmith, so awesome.
Okay.
This movie could have used a bit more Aerosmith, though. Just straight up in the soundtrack.
At the end, it would have just played some Aerosmith as they, smash cut to black.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yep.
I'm imagining Sweet Emotion at the end of the movie. I see a sweet Emotion playing when Frodo is in bed at Rivendell and all the characters come back in.
Yeah.
Somebody make that on YouTube, okay?
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, Liv Tyler, she's good. She's basically just an elf.
Yeah.
So she's cool. It's funny because in real life she has this very sort of high pitched fairy voice, and she's got sort of a deeper like sort of mystical voice in Lord of the Rings, and it works really well.
Yeah.
But you are right. Arwen is indeed an elf.
Yep.
Legolas is also an elf, and he's probably
a different kind of elf. He's a Mirkwood elf.
He is a Mirkwood elf, and he's our sort of final significant elf character to talk about in the series for now.
What about Haldir? What about Celeborn, who's in the movie for like a second?
Those people.
Okay.
We're focusing on main characters. But Legolas, Orlando Bloom, what do you think of Legolas?
I like him. I think
he's badass.
Yeah. I mean, again, I think they get kind of cheesy with the whole, like, he likes the sliding down the stairs and the killing the Mumakil by himself. They're cool, but I could maybe do without them. Like, they I don't know why they always give Legolas the cheesiest fucking stuff.
Yeah, well, this is sort of another situation similar to Liv Tyler, where I don't think Orlando Bloom has been great in a lot of other stuff. He's been very good in certain aspects. And I actually think he can do more than most people trust him with. Like, I think there's a couple of key performances from him, especially in Ridley Scott's Kingdom of Heaven, where he's great in that movie. But Peter Jackson gets really good work out of him here. Yeah. He really embodies Legolas, and it's another character where, partially because Legolas is pretty thinly sketched in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
It feels like that's Legolas. You can just accept it really quickly.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And he looks the part. He looks very elfish.
Yeah. Legolas is also really fucking cheap in the video games because he gets power-ups that allows the arrows to shoot through people.
Yeah.
It's like, once that happens, it's like, well, what is the point of playing anyone else?
Well, anyway, we've been talking about elves.
Yes, we have.
And you know who elves had a last alliance with once upon a time? Were men.
Okay, I thought you were going to try to find a way to segue Legolas into Gimli because that would be the most logical transition.
What I was going to say,
because they paired together.
Well, what I was going to say is that elves hate dwarves, but the irony is that they learn to love each other. Legolas and Gimli. So we talk about Gimli, but there's more men characters to talk about. And I don't know how we get from dwarves to men. So,
do you know who's a lot shorter than other people? Dwarves are, and the other people are men.
It works. So who do you want to talk about next?
I don't know. Did you just...
We should probably talk about Gimli, because Gimli and Legolas are paired together.
Okay, yeah. Did you just use our conversation about your past segue to segue into Gimli?
Yes.
Jesus Christ, man.
So Gimli.
Gimli.
John Rhys Davies is the shit. He's awesome.
Yeah. I love John Rhys Davies in anything, but especially as Gimli. And one of the interesting things about all these characters is that they're in... particularly like Gimli and Legolas, is that they're in a lot of makeup. Well, more Gimli than Legolas, but it's like, I recognize that Gimli is John Rhys Davies mostly because of the voice, but it's like they do so much to make him feel like a dwarf with the beard and using forced perspective to make him seem really small. That it's
and actually for the most part, they don't do forced perspective on Gimli. When you see Gimli in long shots, it's usually someone else.
Yeah.
John Rhys Davies is not in the movies as much as you think. It's kind of funny because any shot of sort of Gimli, Legolas, and Aragorn in action, John Rhys Davies wasn't there for that. And it's kind of funny to think about that.
Yeah.
But John Rhys Davies just does a great job with the character.
Yeah.
And he has heavy prosthetics on his face too.
Yeah, he's got the fucking nose and everything.
And the whole face. And he hated it so much that there's this great shot in the extended cut bonus features where at the end the gift they give him for having been on Lord of the Rings was his last prosthetic, and he takes it and chucks it into the fire. He's so mad. And he was offered to return for The Hobbit, have a cameo somewhere in the trilogy, and he denied because he didn't want to do the prosthetics again. I can't blame him.
Yeah.
But man, John Rhys Davies is so awesome, and how he does that voice, it's just so cool.
Yeah.
But Gimli's great, and he and Orlando Bloom have good chemistry, I think. They sketch that relationship pretty well.
Yep.
It was always one of my favorite parts of the book, is how they become friends.
Yeah.
And they become friends in a cool way here, too. They still have their competition of how many people they can kill, which is pretty macabre when you think of it.
Yeah, especially after the battle at Helm's Deep, and he's got his fucking, axe. It's a great fucking, it's really hilarious scene where he's got his axe embedded in the Uruk-hai's nervous system, just sort of, jerking around, and Legolas thinks it's still alive. It's when you think about it, that's fucking disgusting. It's he's jerking around because you fucking have your axe in his spine, and you're moving it. It's great. Yeah. So, John Rhys Davies plays Gimli. You know who else he plays? That's exactly that was what I was going to say. Well, high five. Plays Treebeard. He does. Decent. That was a segue. All right. There we go.
And you know who Treebeard could stomp on if you
We haven't even fucking talked about Treebeard yet. Slow the fuck down, man.
I'm excited. I had a good one.
I'm sure you didn't.
Okay,
so Treebeard.
Yeah.
Also, it was weird because I did not realize for the longest time that John Rhys Davies also voiced Treebeard until I watched the special things, and I was like, oh shit, yeah, no, he does. Yeah, no, that is John Rhys Davies. It's not even like his voice is that different. It's a really good performance, but it's like, for some reason I never connected that.
I think it works really well. I assume it's just something where Peter Jackson was sort of like, it was always one of the last things they had to cast because it's all post-production work. And he probably just heard John Rhys Davies, and he's like, oh, we should just do a little different voice for that, and he can do Treebeard. And it works really well, and you never really connect it when you're watching with Gimli. Yeah,
exactly. The one thing I love about like his voice of Treebeard is how he paces his voice where it starts we've decided, and then he'll take a really big breath. It's he always kind of starts off with kind of high and then ends with this really out of breath. I just love the pacing of that voice.
It's great because it's something you think they would cut for the movies is the way Treebeard talks, because that's how they describe him talking in the book.
Yeah.
Very slowly. But they really commit to it in the movies, and he really makes it believable.
Yeah, no,
it's how a tree would talk.
Yeah, exactly. If a tree could talk, it would talk like that.
Yeah. And if this tree could say mean things about someone, it would probably say mean things about Saruman. And it does. So we should talk about Saruman.
Jesus Christ! That was bad. That was really bad.
I know.
And there were really easy ones to do there, too.
Oh, absolutely. But I'm just testing you now.
Fuck you. Okay, Saruman.
Christopher Lee, tell us about him.
Christopher Lee is awesome. He's got a really deep voice, and he played Dracula a lot. So
that's all we really need to say.
Yeah, no, fucking Christopher Lee. I think Christopher Lee is one of the best, villainous actors there is, and there should be more Christopher Lee.
Absolutely.
Yep. Do you want to say any more?
Well,
are you trying to buy time to think up your next awful
I haven't. I'm trying to get it out without laughing.
Okay, so we're done talking about Saruman.
Well, no, but Saruman...
Another thing we're going to finish talking about later on is...
No, Saruman, what's the main, culture of people he terrorizes? It's the Rohirrim and people of Rohan. And, who's the leader of Rohan? That would be Theoden. So we should talk about Theoden and Bernard Hill.
Okay, Theoden.
That wasn't terrible.
No, that was awful. That was, that's such just a roundabout fucking stupid way to try to... We're going to end up forgetting half the characters because you're trying to zigzag across, making the most loose possible connections instead of just going a logical order. But fine, whatever. Theoden. What do you want to say about Theoden?
I think Theoden is great. He is absolutely one of my favorite characters. I've always loved this character since I saw him for the first time because Bernard Hill just does a great job with it. Bernard Hill is one of those character actors who, whenever he pops up in anything, he's going to be good. And he really gets the chance to just show what he can do in this trilogy, and I think he's really good.
I agree. He's got some quality speeches.
He does, and he's very regal. You can believe him being a leader for these people.
Yeah.
And, that obviously creates a good contrast with, Denethor, who's obviously a very bad leader for his people.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about Denethor now?
No, that would be going completely out of order.
Okay.
God damn it, Sean.
Okay.
But what do you think about Theoden?
I completely agree with you. I think, and it's one of those things where the character Theoden, I did not picture like this. So it's a lot of the characters I sort of in my head were similar to how they realized them on film. The Theoden, I always kind of pictured Theoden in my head being more like how you first encounter Theoden, where he's all fucked up and corrupted by Grima Wormtongue, and Saruman's whatever the fuck Saruman's doing to him, giving him some really weird ass shit. But that's how I always because I always kind of pictured him being a lot older. But I really like the sort of really kick-ass Theoden they have in the movies.
I do too, and. There are some changes to Theoden in the films. Primarily, he kind of like Aragorn or some of the other characters has an arc now. And in the books, he's really just, once Gandalf sort of frees him from his brainwashing, Theoden just decides he's going to save Rohan, go to war, hold up at Helm's Deep and fight. But in the movies, he's got more doubt. He's not sure what to do. He's sort of antagonistic towards Aragorn. But I think it works really well in The Two Towers because sort of there's a very much a satisfaction to the mutual respect they all develop.
Yeah, I agree. Well, the one thing I do have to say about Theoden is how they do the thing where he's all sort of corrupted and fucked up before. It seems kind of a bit much, almost like maybe a little bit over exaggerated to how I would imagine it being. It was like, don't these people kind of figure out there's something really weird going on when Theoden used to look like Bernard Hill and now he looks like that thing? He's not. Yeah, no, you guys should have figured out that something was fucked up before Gandalf showed up.
I agree. And, in the book, it's much more subtle. He isn't literally under a spell.
Yeah, it's just
Wormtongue has been, draining him down and draining him down and draining him down. And speaking of that, we should probably mention Wormtongue.
Okay, that was there. Okay, that's a good one.
Right.
Grima Wormtongue.
I forget the name of the actor, but I really like this actor.
Yeah, it is one of those actors that's not, a huge... performance in a movie that you would remember him, but he pops up every now and then. I'm like, that's Screamer. He's great.
Yeah, and he's really good in these movies. I mean, that's just Wormtongue, how you imagine him being sort of pathetic, but also a little threatening.
Yeah, and just really sly and kind of just a disgusting human being. His name is Grima Wormtongue. It's kind of sucks to be his parents must have been assholes.
Yeah.
It's already you have the surname Wormtongue, but now Griemer?
Yeah.
Goddamn.
The actor is Brad Dourif, and why I always like Brad Dourif is because he's in the game Myst 3 Exile, which my dad always used to play, and he's the bad guy in that, and it's because Myst uses all, full motion video for their characters, and he's really cool in that game.
Oh, the long-lost days of full motion video.
Oh, I know. What a tragedy. We lost that.
Yeah, fuck it. We've got Wing Commander 3 and Wing Commander 4 with... Mark Hamill and
speaking of tragedies.
Speaking of Mark Hamill, can we somehow connect Mark Hamill?
I was going to say, speaking of tragedies, Eowyn loses her brother, and that's pretty sad, so we should talk about Eowyn.
Okay, let's talk about Eowyn.
Is it her brother or is it her cousin?
Éomer is, I want to say it's her cousin.
But Éomer is alive. Éowyn...
you mean the son. Okay,
it's Theoden's son. It's just her cousin.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
God, I got that totally wrong. I'm sorry. Anyway, Éowyn, I love that character. She's really well done. Miranda Otto, really good.
I agree, and they definitely Éowyn with the books and the audio book. I just kind of forgot Éowyn existed.
Yeah,
they make her a much more compelling and significant character in the movies. I feel,
even though, to be honest, they don't change much about her. That's just Éowyn.
They don't.
They make her a little less fatalistic.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
We should probably talk about, obviously, Éomer, her brother.
Yeah. Speaking of people whose names begin with the letters E and O.
I didn't do that. You should not put those...
Then I'm doing it now.
Okay.
I'm doing it now. Fuck you. Speaking of people whose names begin with the letters E and O, let's talk about Éomer.
And this is Carl Urban, who would go on to be probably the most kick-ass supporting character from this trilogy, because Carl Urban has been in a bunch of great stuff.
Yeah.
Most notably, he's the new McCoy in the Star Trek movies, and probably my favorite character in the J.J. Abrams Star Trek.
Yeah, I agree.
Because he gets McCoy. Mm-hmm. But he also gets Éomer. He's really good. Even if it's kind of a small part in these movies, because Éomer is really just sort of the warrior.
Yeah.
But this is actually heavily beefed up from the books, too, because I forget the name of the character, but there's a different character who does most of Éomer's stuff in the book The Two Towers.
Glorfindel.
It's not Glorfindel.
But it's The Two Towers, Glorfindel.
Right. Well, except he does a lot. It's I hope I can find the name of the guy, but it's Erkenbrand. Erkenbrand is the leader of...
Yeah, I do remember that now.
Yeah, Erkenbrand is a major character in the Two Towers book, and he's also there in The Return of the King 2. Erkenbrand and Éomer sort of merge, and actually Éomer has a lot more of Erkenbrand's qualities in the film than he does Éomer's, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
But he's a cool character.
I agree.
So, speaking of cool characters...
Oh, this could go anywhere.
Aragorn!
That's the one you pick. Now we're going to Aragorn. For fuck's sake, that's the right behind Frodo and Sam, the biggest, most important character in the movies, and that's how you get to Aragorn. We went all the way through fucking Éowyn and Éomer to get to Aragorn.
I thought it was good.
Fuck you. Just fuck you.
All right, well, what character should we go to?
I think we're done. Jesus Christ.
I just feel like we've taken way too long to get to Aragorn.
We should have fucking started and just gone through the Fellowship from the beginning. I don't know why we dealt with all this fucking segue bullshit.
Well, but now we can segue from Aragorn to all the other human characters. Like Boromir. Denethor.
Okay.
See, it makes total sense.
Okay, here we go. I've got a better one. Éomer's name has vowels in it. You know whose other person's name has vowels in it? Fucking Aragorn.
I think that's just cruel, Sean.
Just talk about Aragorn.
All right. Viggo Mortensen? Aragorn? Come on. Talk about it, Sean.
He's Aragorn. He's son of Arathorn. He's the heir to Gondor. He's got a sword. He gets another sword. But in the book, he has the first sword for the whole time.
All right, well, describe how Aragorn in the movies has sort of been expanded upon from Aragorn in the books.
Okay, so in the books, like we said, Aragorn kind of has already gone through his whole I want to be king thing. And so by the beginning, once you meet him as Strider, he's carrying around the shards of Narsil. He's like, I want to become king of Gondor. I need an opportunity to do it. And that's kind of where he's at the whole time. He's just trying to get to Gondor and then fulfill his mission with the ring. And as opposed to in the movies, he's doing the whole ring thing, but he doesn't want to become king of Gondor yet. He feels like he's got this burden as being the heir to Isildur who kind of fucked everything up because he was all like, no. So he's all angsty about that, and then eventually he stops being angsty about it.
Yeah.
That's Aragorn.
Oh, thank you. I like how you just described it. He just stops being angsty.
Well, yeah, that's his character arc in the movie is, I don't know about this, and then arriving at the point where it's like, yeah, okay.
But do you think it works?
Yeah, no, I really like it. Again, it's one of those changes where in a film you do need to have much more dramatic character arcs because it's not this, you're not like reading something, you're not so heavily involved in it where you're witnessing it. So you need to have these very dramatic character arcs, and they had to construct
and Aragorn
characters.
is sort of your secondary protagonist.
Yeah, exactly. Because again, particularly for Two Towers and Return of the King, the story branches off where like half of it is Frodo and Sam doing their shit, and the other half of it is Aragorn and all the other guys doing their shit. And so Aragorn's sort of leading that pack. So they need to make him a very compelling, dynamic figure.
Right. Well, I'll say Aragorn is my second favorite character in these movies. Very close to Gandalf in that respect. I just really love him. And Viggo Mortensen has turned out to be one of my favorite actors of all time.
Yeah,
He's a great actor. I mean, you look at some of the movies he's done since then. I think Hidalgo was the first big one he did. Not a great movie. He's awesome in it.
Yeah, yeah.
And then, but the notable ones are probably the David Cronenberg movies. I mean, A History of Violence is phenomenal, and he's amazing in that. And also Eastern Promises, where he has the naked bath fight, which is horrifying to watch.
Yeah, that's like... what I love with Viggo Mortensen is that after he did Lord of the Rings, he goes off and does a bunch of Cronenberg movies. Like, it's such a weird, like, sidestep that now I'm going to do these really artsy, R-rated Cronenberg flicks. Yeah. It's awesome.
He played... I always forget he did play Carl Jung. No, Sigmund Freud, sorry, in a Cronenberg film, A Dangerous Method. Not a good movie, but he was good in it. He's just a top-notch actor.
Yeah.
And he's really great in these, just... portraying sort of that... for one, I think you really get that rugged sense with Viggo Mortensen, which most movie stars, or whoever you would put in this kind of role, they would be kind of playing that. Viggo Mortensen feels like he is that.
Yeah. It's like, for some reason, it feels like Viggo Mortensen has never taken a shower in his life, even though I'm sure he has, but it's like his hair is always sort of like that, particularly in these movies where he's got the really long hair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he looks cool, he sounds cool, he does great with the speeches, all the emotional material. This is a grade A performance. It's fantastic acting. And it's just such a compelling character to me because it's interesting, he's not the savior of Middle-earth, but he's kind of the guy who backs up the saviors.
Yeah.
If he wasn't there, he's very much sort of the kingly kind of character, of someone who has to go through all these trials basically for the sake of other people.
Yeah.
In essence. And he has something to work for himself, which is Arwen, but the great struggle there is that he could have Arwen whenever he wants. There's always that temptation for him that he could just go back to Rivendell and be with the love of his life and not worry about this.
He could marry the daughter of Steve Tyler.
Right.
That means he could hang out with Steve fucking Tyler.
That'd be great.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah. But instead, he goes off to war and he does all these great things. And he's a very compelling character. And obviously, again, he is different on page. But to me, this is one of the smartest changes in the whole trilogy because it makes a very large. It doesn't just make Aragorn dynamic; it makes a large swath of the films more dynamic. I mean, you add a lot in there.
Yeah.
So, rounding out the Fellowship, we should probably talk about.
You're not going to do another. You're done with your
shitty
segues.
Aragorn's a man of Gondor. Boromir's a man of Gondor. We can do that.
Okay, there we go.
But he's also Boromir's the last one of the Fellowship that we should talk about. He's also the first to die. It's Sean Bean. This is another one where Sean Bean is Boromir.
Yeah,
That's Boromir from the book, and it's perfect.
And with the audiobook and everything, Boromir was always one of those characters that I never cared about before I saw the movies. I always kind of just forgot he was one of the Fellowship because he does die pretty early on in like the whole scope of the story.
Right. His death kicks off the breaking of the Fellowship and all these things. And
so like Boromir was never a character I really like thought about or remembered. Sean Bean makes Boromir fucking awesome. Especially like that's like I said where that scene hit me so much harder the last time I watched the movies. That performance, like I love that performance more and more every single time I watch it. I don't know what it is about it, but
it's like, a really good performance.
Yeah. It's like, and it's especially because once you have the whole perspective of the other like scenes that are added on for his character later on in the other films, it's like you get this really good sense of who this version of Boromir really is, and it's like very compelling to me compared to I never cared that much about him in the books.
Yeah, well, and Sean Bean is just a damn good actor.
Yeah,
and he's proven that again in works since Lord of the Rings, obviously most notably Game of Thrones. But he's really good.
I always loved. I haven't watched any of Game of Thrones. I'm going to wait till it's done and then I'm going to watch it. But I always loved when like that was coming out and they had like all the teaser trailers and like the posters of him just standing there. It's like they should have just like on those trailers. It should have said like Game of Thrones, fucking Boromir, and just like in it with that.
That's how they advertised season 1.
Yeah, basically, it was like all I know almost nothing about Game of Thrones. I just know fucking Boromir. I know his name's not Boromir. He probably is kind of different than Boromir. Fucking Boromir.
Well, and it's Game of Thrones is an ensemble piece, and no one is the main character at all. But how else are you going to advertise it?
Fucking Boromir.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, Sean Bean dies in everything he ever makes.
Yes.
Pretty much. So
he dies spectacularly in Fellowship.
Oh yeah, it's a great death. It's a fucking painful one to watch, no matter how many times you see it.
Yeah.
Arrow 1, Arrow 2.
Yeah, it's like
whatever sound effect they got, the thud when it goes in him, that's like sickening. It's like
it's like that scene's fucking brutal. That scene just like makes you realize the reality of getting shot with a fucking arrow where you just have this like wooden shaft sticking out of your chest all of a sudden. Like that's fucked up.
Yeah, it's too bad. So they should have worked Sean Bean into like the Hunger Games somewhere so he could get shot with an arrow. There's a bunch of archery in that. He
can get shot with an arrow by the best of them.
Yeah.
And he's a pro at that.
He is. So, in any case, what other characters are there to talk about? Other men of Gondor. His father, Denethor.
Yep.
This is John Noble. I love John Noble. He's a really good actor.
Yep.
He's a lot of fun on the show Fringe, which I stopped watching because it was a steaming pile of horseshit, but John Noble's good on it.
Okay.
Yeah, but he's really good at just crazy Denethor, but crazy in a way where you kind of understand him. You don't really hate him at any moment. I guess you do kind of hate him, but you don't ever get to that point where you don't want to watch him.
Yeah, I agree. I think, and he's really good at eating stuff in a really gross way.
He's very good at that.
In a way that I've never seen anybody else eat.
We already talked about David Wenham as Faramir, and that he's really good at sort of reinterpreting that character.
Yeah.
Doing a very good job at it. Is there really anyone else left?
I could probably tell you, but we made such a bizarre, winding path throughout the cast of the characters of the Lord of the Rings that we went in no particular order whatsoever that I cannot remember which ones we've talked about and which ones we haven't.
Sean, don't you tell me we went in no particular order whatsoever. We went from Hobbit to Gollum, back to Hobbits, to Wizard, to Elves, to...
Yeah, right? Yeah, right? Right. Yeah, that's the order. We went from... There's speaking of characters we haven't talked about, we didn't talk about the moth that Gandalf talks to.
Radagast the Brown.
Yeah.
Are you excited for Radagast in the Hobbit movie?
Yeah, Sylvester McCoy. Fuck yeah.
Oh yeah.
Anything. Anything Sylvester McCoy's in, I will watch.
Nice.
And I will enjoy.
You were already going to watch and enjoy the Hobbit.
Right. Well, yeah.
You're going to watch and enjoy it
even more so now.
Yes.
Sylvester McCoy's in there.
So, anything else to say about the Lord of the Rings film trilogy? Battery on my laptop's running low, so we should probably wrap this up.
That's a good idea.
Okay.
They're
great movies.
All the shitty segues really took the wind out of my sails, I have to say.
I'm sorry, Sean.
That was a rough patch of podcast there, Jonathan.
I apologize. I think it was probably entertaining for our listeners, and if it wasn't, please email Sean at
the WGTCradio.com.
Okay. That's not actually an email address. But
you can fucking try.
Okay.
I'm not going to find it, but...
Nevertheless, Lord of the Rings, it's my favorite movie of all time. And I grouped them all together because you can do that. And They're great. I love these movies to death. I would not be the sort of film critic I am. I wouldn't do what I do with film if it weren't for Lord of the Rings. These movies are just... This is what film adaptation should be.
Yeah.
It's to me, it's the pinnacle of that. As an art of taking a book and turning it into a movie. This is how you do it, and this is how you do it well. And they are fantastic movies. What boggles me, we were talking about all the characters, and that you have this massive cast of characters for one, and that you can service all of them at the same time is mind-boggling. But that Peter Jackson cast this whole movie without miscasting a single person, how does that happen?
I don't know.
That just doesn't seem possible.
It's pretty fucking incredible.
Yeah. So anything you want to say?
I think for me, like what Lord of the Rings does better than anything still is sort of as a fantasy movie constructing the world that it exists in, and obviously it's built on the like unprecedented foundation that J.R.R. Tolkien provided, but they were able to realize that visually in such a meticulous and fascinating way, where it's like, the movies are so amazing to just watch on that level, where you get completely absorbed in the world that they create, but then also it's just the process of having to make that is so fascinating that you have all the bonus materials that are just phenomenal on the DVDs, and then just like books and everything about the production of the films. That's like, that side of it to me is so monumentally fascinating and such an achievement that it still has not been beaten.
Yeah, and we didn't really mention it, but I think one of the most important aspects in building the world of Middle-earth on film is the music.
Yeah.
And I don't want to get too deep into it because I think that would be its own podcast, but Howard Shore's score for Lord of the Rings is without a doubt, in my mind, the best film score of all time. There's nothing, he is, for one, it's a 12-hour score, but just the work he did and the focus he puts on, he writes a lot of themes. It's a theme-based score. It's a theme and leitmotif-based score. But all the themes and leitmotifs are about cultures and areas. There's no specific character themes. Mm-hmm. And that's what builds the world of Middle-earth. You get the sense of what the Shire is, partially because Howard Shore helps you along with his music. Yeah. You get a sense of what Rohan is because of the musical styles he uses there. It's great music.
Yep. Speaking of great music, Glorfindel.